We're streaming.
So I said, why'd you do that? And he goes, what? I go, why'd you eat my pie? And he goes, there's still a rhubarb pie. I go, no, nobody likes rhubarb. What is rhubarb? We're on?
We are on, Dave. We are now on. We are live streaming.
Sorry.
We are live streaming episode 20 with James Powell.
Either or.
Also goes by Jason. Jason served in the Marine Corps. And then after that, he was a staff operations officer with the Central Intelligence Agency. And today you continue to work.
Yeah,
dual-hatted. Dual-hatted.
As a civilian recruiter for the Office of Naval Intelligence, and then part-time for New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security, as in their Counterterrorism Watch Center.
Yeah, and we've known each other for a while now. What?
2014?
6 years or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, you came, I think, weren't you working in... No, you had been working in nuclear security for a little while also.
Yeah, that was before I even went to the agency. After I got out of the Marine Corps and before I went to CIA. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I came to know you through the old SOFRET, answered an ad for writers, and I sent out an email, and somebody, I don't even think they worked there long after I got there, had to answer a few questions, the hokey, we need to vet you sort of thing, and then I came aboard. Yeah.
So I guess we just gotta get into. Go ahead, Dave.
Should we say hi? Episode 20?
Yeah,
Did we do that? Did we? Sorry, I was trying to turn all this off. And I think did you just move off screen?
A little bit. I'm just trying to work on it. I'm directing and hosting, so like I'm also dual-hatted when we do this.
Yeah, we're there.
But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Again, we're here with James Powell, aka Jason. And I don't know. You want to start at the beginning? I mean, are you actually from Philadelphia? You grew up there?
No, I don't even live in Philadelphia. No, I worked there That was my last assignment for when I was at the agency, and I work in Philly now for the Department of the Navy. But I'm from Jersey, from the shore. I hate saying it, the Jersey Shore.
The Jersey Shore. Where?
So I'm from Brielle, which is this tiny town in between Point Pleasant and Manasquan, which is what most people know, or Asbury Park. A lot of people say, "Oh, is that near Atlantic City?" No, it's nowhere near Atlantic City. It's central Jersey on the shore. So grew up there. Did the normal kid things, sports and all that. And but I knew I always wanted to be a Marine, and so when I left, I got out of high school. I'd had my oldest daughter just after I graduated high school. So I went on a delayed entry program to the Marine Corps. Did that from 92 until 2001. I got really sick over in Japan and literally died. Whatever it was, they don't know, some kind of virus.
You told me this is you were the bubble boy.
Yes, I was the bubble boy, yeah. So I woke up one day, so backtrack, that Friday that I got sick on a Monday. That Friday, a friend of mine flew in from Thailand, good friend of mine, I'm still friends with him today, with his family. His daughter was sick. I picked them up from the airport and drove them home. The next day he called me and said, "Hey, can you take my daughter to the hospital?" He was working. He wasn't going to get there in time. "Can you take her to the emergency room?" No problem. Took her to the emergency room. We figured it was a bad flu. That was a Saturday. That Monday, I woke up thinking I had the flu. And within a few hours, my brain had swelled. My temperature was like 105 degrees, all kinds of stuff. So most of this I don't remember. My ex-wife was really good about filling in the gaps. So at one point, it got so bad that the doctor said to my ex-wife, "You should prepare yourself because we don't know if we can save him." So
this is like a Michael Crichton novel.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, did something similar happen to his daughter? Like, did she go through the same thing?
Not the exact same thing, but she got pretty bad.
Okay.
The difference is she got over it within a week or so.
Yeah.
Literally a year.
Wow.
It took me, not for the big stuff, the swelling of brain and all that, but to go back to some semblance of normal. So in the midst of all this, literally, this was in a day's time. They had taken me to the base clinic in Iwakuni. It's an air base, Marine Corps Air Base in Japan. But it was just a clinic. So they took me out in town to a Japanese hospital. Literally, the Japanese took one look at me and went, "Whoop, nope, get him out of here," because they didn't want, that part in the movie where the monkey, spreads.
Right.
Yeah, they were like, "No."
The red is spreading across the map.
That's why, but in Japan it stops.
Yeah,
it just stops.
Yeah, they're like,
it's like no.
Yeah, negative. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so they they flew me to, I believe it was Atsugi. They flew me to there, and it was really cool because the whole base kind of rallied around me. The base commander was a pilot, and he personally intervened to get a plane, I believe it was a C-9, to come down and get me, flew me back up there. I was in a bubble for a little while.
That's crazy.
Plastic room.
And they could never figure out what it was,
Nope.
huh?
They sent a team from CDC over to figure out what was going on, and from February of 2001 to I think it was like sometime in 2002, I had a total of like 18 or so spinal taps.
That's
and if you've ever had a spinal tap, they make you.
I never had one, but I've helped people for them.
And
And it's not.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. So never figured out what it was. All they knew was that there was intense pressure on my brain. So whenever they did the spinal tap, I guess from drawing the fluid off, the pressure would go down. Then it would go right back up again.
Now, so let's get this straight, because everybody wants to know.
Yeah.
Is this your origin story? Is this how you became is this how you became like super like?
So when Denzel plays me in the movie,
right.
make sure he gets his part right.
Right.
So actually it'd be more like Bill Duke or somebody with his head. So got real sick, and then again it took like within a year or so I was starting to recover, but the biggest overriding thing was I kept passing out from, I guess, the pressure in my brain. So I was passing out like breaking things, breaking bones and stuff from passing out. So I went from Iwakuni, Japan. They flew me to Okinawa, couldn't figure out what was wrong. Sent me back to Japan, sent me to Hawaii, couldn't figure out what was wrong. Tripler. I think it was Tripler, yeah. Sent me back to Japan, and finally, literally the commanding general of 3rd Mall, I believe it was 3rd, is it 3rd Mall over there, 2nd Mall, said, you will not send him back to Japan. You will send him somewhere, you will not send him back to Japan until you can fix him, or you determine you can't, you medically retire him. So they sent me to Balboa in San Diego. And I remember meeting with the neurologist there, and he said, I remember these words, he said, I am the best at what I do, and if I can't fix you, nobody can fix me. Well, a couple months later, he was like, I can't fix you. So I actually passed out while I was talking to him at one point. I was standing there talking to him. Next thing I know, I'm in a hospital bed. I'm like, holy shit happened. And he's like, you went down hard.
Yeah.
So,
and he didn't even try to get you, did he? He was like, oh.
Yeah. So
a young James Powell was. I've seen those pictures of you when you had your high and tight in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, could you even call it high? It was just tight.
It was high.
It was
and
like
tight.
sat right up here. There was no grading. It was just skin and that.
I would have caught you. Nowadays, I don't know. You'd probably crush me.
How come they didn't send you to Thailand? Because it came from Thailand.
It obviously came from Thailand.
And if they would have sent you to Thailand, some Thai doctor would have probably just given you like two aspirin, some
tiger penis,
some tiger penis, and
some rhinoceros horn.
Exactly, I see a rhinoceros horn, and you would have been good.
Exactly, and what's crazy
I'm sure they've dealt with that.
Yeah,
before.
and I obviously picked it up from his daughter. But what's crazy is, in between that Saturday or that Friday and that Monday, I was around my kids, I was around my ex-wife, none of them got sick.
Really?
Yeah, none of them got sick, no symptoms, no nothing. So, so he decided, okay, I can't fix you. So they processed me for the temporary disabled retirement list for the Marine Corps. He said, okay, we're going to send you back to your home of record, which is in Jersey, and we'll figure out from there. And I was going to have to go to Walter Reed. Bethesda at the time. And so they flew me to up near San Diego, Travis Air Force Base. Yeah, Travis Air Force Base, waiting to fly me back to Jersey, and I'm asleep.
Travis is up in Washington State, right? You said San Diego?
No, San Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco.
Yeah. Is it near there?
I can't remember.
I know it was near San Francisco.
Alameda was up there. In a Naval Air Station.
Whatever
Naval base.
Whatever Air Force Base is up there.
Yeah.
Yes, that's where I was. So
sorry.
I remember being woken up, and the night before I had a seizure. And so I don't really remember the night before much, but I remember being woken up by a nurse, and they said, you need to call your wife, my ex-wife now, but they said, you need to call your wife. I'm like, okay. And I'm not putting together that as I'm doing all this, there's all these planes just taking off, tanker after, transport and all this stuff, and people are running around. I'm like, all right, whatever. So go make a phone call, and she's upset, and I'm like, now, they're still in Japan. My ex-wife and kids are still in Japan. They had come a bunch of times to see me, and they came to Hawaii, and they came to San Diego. But they figured, all right, he's going back to Jersey, we'll follow on later on. So she's upset, and I'm like, what's going on? She's like, you don't know? And I'm like, no. And she's like, turn on the TV. So I turn on the TV, and one of the towers is burning. It was September 11th.
Holy shit.
Yeah, 2001. I'm like, whoa. I was like, so she put the kids on the phone. I remember I think it was my oldest daughter, upset because from our apartment building on base, you could see the roof of her school, and they had set up posts, machine gun posts, and there were Humvees with machine guns at the gate and everything. And so she's like, Daddy, there's men with the big guns. And I'm like, it's okay, it's all right. And my whole time I'm thinking, I gotta get back there. So I call my unit, and they're like, you're not coming back here. They're like, nobody is coming. If you're in the States, you're stuck in the States.
Yeah.
Unless you're operationally necessary, you're not coming back. So so they ended up sending me back to Jersey. And then my family came about a month or so later. They were able to come back. So I piddled around on this TDRL for a while, and then they made it permanent in July of 2002. And so I'm like, what do I do now? So the doctor's like, well, you can't work. You can barely stay conscious, So I don't know how I finagled it, but I was able to finagle my way into part-time work as a security, doing unarmed security. In Jersey, and then I got cleared by my doctor at Bethesda to work nuclear security. They had, at the time, they were hiring because, it's right after 9/11, they really want to beef up the security, so, and I had the military background. I was a grunt 0311, and then I moved into the 7011, which is expeditionary airfields.
Okay.
So I had the background at the time.
What is expeditionary? I'm not familiar with that.
So expeditionary airfields would be like, let's just say Saudi Arabia doing the Gulf War, or Kuwait or whatever. They would go in, expeditionary airfields guys would go into areas that have been deemed safe and build runways along with either CVs or construction guys, and put in either helipads and refuel FARPs, refueling points, or put in arresting gear and just start trapping aircraft. Forward deployed arresting hook geared aircraft. So I did that for a while. So I guess I had the military background. So they were being really stringent at the time. And I think I actually wrote an article. That was my first article for SOFREP, was about the state of nuclear security, which is not very good. And I caught hell about that, but whatever.
The same thing happened with the Air Marshal program after 9/11.
Yeah.
It was like this level, nuclear security and air marshals were this really intense, really high level thing. And then the demand for both nuclear security and air marshals superseded the desire to maintain the standards.
Yeah.
And apparently standards in both fields just dropped dramatically.
Just dropped. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do a whole segment on it. on this, I don't know how it is today. I've been out of the game for a while, but
you were not confident in our nuclear security posture at that time?
At that time, well, in the beginning, yes. When I first got there, yes. Although, and anyone who worked with me, I won't say where the place was, anyone who worked with me will know this story. The day that I checked in, so they had their old guard, and then they had the new people coming in. So the day that I checked in, you go through the main gate, park your vehicle, and then you go to the, I forget the name of the building. Basically, it's where you enter, you put all your stuff on the conveyor belt, you go through the metal detectors, and then when you pass through that, when you're finished there, you're in the RAD area. You're now in an area where you have to have the you know, you have to be
The badge,
the badge,
detects
yeah,
the radiation
and all that
exposure and
stuff.
stuff like that.
Yeah. So outside of that place, it's kind of like a parking lot. You know, anybody can, you know, as long as you're allowed to access, you can be in that area. So there's this guy. He has the security uniform on, leaned up against the building. Did you ever see those cutouts? I think they're mostly in the South. I've seen them up here, where it's like a cowboy and he's like leaning against a tree or smoking a cigarette or whatever. This guy was posed like that, and so I walk by him and I remember saying, "Hey," and he doesn't answer. So I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So I go in and do my thing, and then we were sitting in the shift briefing, and this guy is like two rows ahead of me, and all of a sudden I hear something. I'm thinking this guy's taking a piss. I'm like, "What is going on here?" And I look, and he's spilling his drink, his Coke, and so somebody taps on the shoulder. He goes out. Well, come to find out, this guy had surgery, and somehow, I don't know if he made friends with his doctor or whatever, but he was able to get morphine patches. This is long after surgery.
Okay.
So he was slapping morphine patches on and coming to work and passing out. Like, so he had like cigarette burns on his uniform from like smoking and ashing on his uniform and stuff. So that was my introduction to nuclear security. So you know, I mean,
nothing to be alarmed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nothing like crazy glamorous. I mean, yeah, you know, your AR-15. It used to be shotguns, AR-15, your Glock and stuff like that. And you know, you got your tac vests and all that stuff. But it's not like you're running and gunning every day. The most excitement that I remember, and again, things could have changed. I haven't been there since like 2005 or so. The most excitement was when we did force-on-force drills. So they have like this team where they would take former special operations personnel, pair them with people who were handpicked from these different nuclear facilities, and train them up. They would go somewhere and train them up, and basically they would do like mock attacks on places just to test the defenses. So that's when everybody got all spun up. We're out at the range when we're shooting and stuff. So it was good fun. I worked with some good people. But in the midst of that, I was going to school. I was going to college. And so I was going to work, working 12-hour shifts, getting off work, and going right to college. And I was the old man in these classes. So, you know, I'm watching these kids, you know, coming in, you know, half drunk or whatever. And I'm just dying because I was up for 12 hours. But so I'm doing that. And in the midst of that, I had a cousin who contacted me. And I'd see him every couple of years or so at a barbecue or whatever. Knew he worked for the government. Figured, you know, he was State Department because that's what, you know, we get the pictures and all. So he contacts me and he's like, "What are you doing right now?" This is what I'm doing. So, okay, send me your resume. Send him my resume. He comes back, had blood all over it. Take this out, you know, why would you put this in there? And I'm like, okay. And so I rewrite it, send it back. He's like, "Okay, great. Now I want you to apply to all these different places." And he sent me a list from Department of Energy all the way through FBI and everything in between. And in there was CIA. So I'm thinking to myself, you know, why do I have to apply to all these places? So I do it. Some I never heard from, some I did and got, you know, a quarter of the way. Some, you know, Secret Service was, I think I made it the farthest. I don't remember exactly where, but I made it pretty far with them. And then at a certain point, everybody just started falling off, and except for the agency. And so finally, he sits me down and he's like, "Okay, this is who I work for. This is why I did what I did." He wanted to hide it in there, you know. So he's like, "Who have you told that you applied?" And I was like, "Nobody." I had told my ex-wife. I said, "My ex-wife," and he said, "Okay, that's it. Don't tell anybody else." All right, fine. So at that time, by this time, I had left the nuke plant and was working for a company, a mobile training team run by he's a still active police officer. He's a SWAT team guy. So he said, "Hey, you know, I'd like you to come aboard." I met him at a security expo. As one of my counterterrorism guys, you can teach like the history of it, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I had to go through all of his courses, all his run and gun courses, be certified in those, and then assist in those while teaching the history of counterterrorism, things like that. So part of that was we had to go overseas. So I was in Taiwan and, you know, and some other places, not realizing that every time I went back overseas, it restarted my security background check. So literally what now takes, I guess, about 6 months once you hit send for the agency to come aboard took 3 years.
Oh.
And I didn't know this. So I'm doing all this traveling. And then finally, I remember we were up, my family was up in Maine. And where we were with some friends, there was barely any reception. And I just remember a phone call coming through. And I'm standing at the end of this dock. And it was a recruiter from the agency. And she's like, listen, do you plan on traveling anymore? And I'm like, I don't know why. And she said, because we keep having to restart your security investigation. Really like to bring you on board. And I'm like, okay. So no more traveling. So that was the summer of 2007. By December 2008, they called and said, okay, we have a school or a class slot for you. Do you want to take it? I said, yes. And March of 2008, I came on board. Went through CERT, operations officer CERT course 1.5 times, because the first time I went through about 6 months, but halfway through my appendix decided it didn't want to be a part of my body anymore and just burst.
Yeah.
And so had to leave.
Your
and come
appendix
back.
had a party.
Yeah. So went through again, and then ended up not finished, or I finished but not starting at the end of it. So I slid over to staff operations officer course.
Okay.
Was back in headquarters, went through the staff operations officer course, finished that, no problem, and then went to, well, in between that, I had my youngest daughter was sick. Thank God it wasn't anything crazy, but it was enough that I didn't go anywhere overseas yet. So Philadelphia station was closest to where I lived, so they said, hey, send them up here. So I was going back and forth between there and headquarters in Jersey to see my daughter, and then eventually I got a full-time slot there. But before that, I volunteered to go overseas, so I went to Kabul for a bit, and then I came back, did some stuff with Philly and stuff here in the States, other TDYs here and there, and in May of 2014 is when I left the agency.
So I think that like the whole mystique of the CIA,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that's some things that people are very curious about. When you were initially, not when you were applying, because I know you just kind of sent out resumes everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but when you got your first, like, was the recruiter's call, was that the first time you'd actually heard from them?
No. The first time I heard from them was, so I sent in I did it online like I was supposed to. And what I was told by my cousin was, you're either going to get a fat envelope or you're going to get a thin one. If you get the thin one, it's basically, hey, thanks, but no thanks, you could try again in 6 months or whatever it is. I got the fat one. So anybody who's ever gone through it will know that, and I'm sure that
Can
this
we
is...
say a fat envelope anymore on you, like in that
it's not
envelope
politically-
shaming?
Yeah.
I'm
So,
comfortable.
all right,
Is
it's
it-
a...
Plus size.
Plus
It's a
size
plus size envelope.
Yes, plus size envelope. I did not have the model size.
It's a BBE, right? A big beautiful envelope.
yes,
Is that what it is?
yes.
Yeah.
So I got that one, and so I did everything that they asked for. And if anybody has ever gone through this, and I'm sure other agencies are the same way. You open it up and you're expecting to see the big seal, and all this other stuff, and fireworks, red and blue fireworks. No, it is like a blank piece of paper with like a date on it, and hey, be at this place at this time or whatever it is. And so I did everything they were supposed to, and then I swear to this day that this was a test. At one point they said they did a telephone interview, and part of that telephone interview, the woman said, okay, I'm going to call you. Are you available on Thursday morning? I was like, sure. I said, I have class, but I can step out and answer. She goes, no, I don't want you to meet class, but what time is your class? So I told her 8 o'clock. And she said, okay, at 7:33 on Thursday in the morning, I'm going to call you. Can you be available then? I'm like, well, sure, I'll be available at 7:30. No, 7:33. Okay, no problem. She was like, all right, I'm going to call. Sure enough, it's 7:33 on the dot. And she made sure, she's like, are you going to use your phone or your cell phone? And I was like, I'll use my, whatever you tell me. And she was like, use your cell phone, which later on played into, part of my training. So 7:33, look at my cell phone, boom, the phone rings. It was her. So she was like, okay, just wanted to make sure that you could do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
You know, and be punctual. So I was like, okay. So that was the first one. So then I got a letter asking if I could come down to Northern Virginia for a face-to-face interview. Okay, no problem. So they arranged a flight down there. You know, I knew where I was going. I knew the hotel and all that stuff. And my ex drove me up to Newark Airport. And I go to the counter, and they're like, we don't have a ticket for you. I'm like, what? And they're like, we don't have a ticket. Now, this is like 5 o'clock in the evening or whatever. So I'm frantically trying to call somebody down at headquarters, and finally somebody picks up. And I explained to the woman, and she had like no sympathy. And she's like, well, I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're going to do. And I was like, well, can I get another flight? She's like, I don't know, can you? And then she's like, well, hold on. Where do you live? And I told her, and she said, would you be willing to drive down? And I was like, sure. She's like, you sure? And I said, yeah. So now by this time my ex-wife had left. So she had to turn back around on the turnpike and come back and get me. Not happy at all. So she came back and got me, drove home, threw my stuff into my car, drove down to Virginia. And during this interview, you know, I did the interview, and during the interview, and I think I might have told you this story, they had us go into this building, this business, you know, just a regular building, and go upstairs to this office. So the office had like a glass front. So when I get there, I'm like, am I in the right place? Because there was nobody at the front desk. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So I stood there for a minute, and of course they must have had a camera because someone comes out, take me into this, like a boardroom, and there's all these people sitting around. And most about my age, some younger, some maybe a little older. And the woman's like, okay, you guys just sit in here, talk amongst yourselves, get to know each other, you know, that sort of thing. So we're talking, and by the time my turn came to go into my little interview thing, I was just completely defeated. And the woman that I sat with, this little old white lady, she was just the nicest, seemed like the nicest lady, was like, what's wrong? You seem like something's wrong. So I'm sitting in this room with these people, and they're talking about being lawyers, some were spec ops, some were, I said, there are all these accomplishments. I was like, and I just feel like maybe I don't belong here. And this woman says to me, and I know my kids are listening, so she says to me, don't you ever fucking say that to me again. And I was like, and she was like, let me tell you something. She said, I don't know the exact statistics, but from what I understand, we recruit less than 1% of the population of this country. She said, if you're here, you belong here. She's like, so don't you ever let what anybody else has on their pedigree affect who you are. And I was like, okay. I saw that lady probably, so this was 2006 or 7. So I saw her probably in like 2009. She remembered exactly who I was.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, she was awesome. She was sitting in a class that I was in, and she came up to me. She's like, do you remember me? And I'm like, wow, yeah, I do. And she's like, did you learn the lesson? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she was like, good, don't call me ma'am again. Yeah, so it really stayed with me throughout that career and into today. And I try to teach that to my kids too.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing.
The point is not to self-select yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I remember in Special Forces Assessment and Selection, like there were other people in there. I remember there was a guy who was a Russian speaker. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Spanish speakers, of course. There's a guy who spoke Polish.
Yeah.
All these people had these like foreign language capabilities and understood foreign cultures and stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm just some kid from New York.
Yeah.
I was an 11 Bravo. I don't know shit. I'm like, I can carry a rucksack and shoot guns and stuff like that. I know about tactics, but these guys are like way ahead of me. But some of those guys were non-selects.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's what looks good on a resume is not necessarily, doesn't encompass the whole person.
Sure.
And that's something that I learned even as a recruiter now with Naval Intel. It's they can put down all the flowery stuff that they want, but until they're sitting in front of you, and even then, some people know how to interview. Whereas, and that's why I've always believed that even an interview, you have to have a formal interview, of course. But I did an interview once with Lawrence Livermore, the lab out there in California, and I sweat like I'm being chased by hounds, like a runaway slave, as I say it. But I was out there. It's blazing hot. I'm in a suit, and part of what I had to do for the interview was give a presentation, a 45-minute presentation, and to this board, and I'm just sitting there sweating so bad. And thank God for this guy that was running it, because he said, let's just stop. He said, get this guy a glass of water. He was like, take off your jacket, sit down. We're just going to have a conversation. He was like, forget the presentation. We're just going to talk about you. Turns out that he grew up 2 towns away from where I did, knew some of the same people. And, of course, none of that helped me because I'm sitting right here and not working at Lawrence. But whatever. But it was nice, So I just believe that, and so
the message here is don't sweat. Like if you can get rid of your gland, like whatever,
and try to find out as much as you can about the person that's interviewing, because you might be able to use that.
Yeah.
But it just, between the agency and this job here, I found out I really like getting to know people, because that once you make them comfortable, and then this works in the spy world as well, they start to let their guard down. And either they rise to being the good person that they are, or they show their asshole side. And, so, of course, in this job now, I don't make the final decision on who gets hired, but here's a real quick funny story. I had a resume from a guy, and there's a gap. And we're used to that. It happens, we just adjudicate it. We'll have people who adjudicate it, they'll call, say, what's going on? Well, we didn't have to do that, because the bottom of this guy's resume, he had a little star, and it says, note, that the gap in his resume was because he had slept with his boss's wife and got fired and was unemployed between.
That was the bullet point.
That was what he put on his thing, because he just wanted to be honest.
That's a straight up. Yeah.
And all I can do is be like, noted. I don't make the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. But. So I guess the lesson there is don't sleep with your boss's wife.
Don't get caught, or don't put it on your resume.
Yeah, don't put it on your resume.
I mean, I don't know. Does that come under special skills?
It could be.
But he got fired. So they can't be all that special.
Yeah. Right.
So then after I left the agency, I wrote for software for a little bit, and then started working for, the official title is the Department of the Navy's Office of Civilian Human Resources, OCHR. Under that, they have NAVSUP, naval supply that they'll recruit for, naval aviation, all that stuff. I work for naval intelligence. So
now, is that recruiting civilians into the GS system, or is that recruiting officers?
It's both, actually.
Okay.
So I don't recruit people off the street to join the Navy. I recruit for people who have either like me, had an intelligence background and want to get back into the game, or slide over from another agency, or military personnel who have the skills, not necessarily intel skills, but the skills that command is looking for, and they're about to get out from the military. So we will say, okay, your projected EAS date is 6 months. You can apply now. They just can't take you until
now. Do you go looking for those people, or do you wait for them?
We wait for them.
Okay.
Yeah. The commands can go looking for them, and what they'll do is do recruiting rodeos at like not trade shows, schools or job fairs, things like that. They can go looking for them, but we wait for them to apply via USA Jobs or a flyer. Like if, let's just say it's for a promotion spot. Let's say we are a Command and Naval Intel, and they have a GS-15, or it's a GG, it's not GS, a GG-15 position. We're all 14s. They will put up a flyer. It's not an actual flyer, but they'll send out an email and say, we're going to post for this job. And what they have to do is let us know, hey, we are posting this job. It's going to be internal. So it just changes the dynamics of how it works. They recruit it instead of us. We just do the admin part of it on the back end. But normally what happens is Joe Schmo from off the streets says, I want to get back into the intel game, or I don't have an intel background, but I have cyber skills, computer skills based on what I did in the Air Force, or what I do, or nunchuck skills, whatever it is. Yeah. And they'll apply on USA Jobs, then we'll see it and, work it through that way.
So what are some, like, are there some, because there are people watching, I mean, we got 40 people on right now, and, more people will watch this. And for anybody who, whether it's the CIA or the Office of Naval Intelligence or, any other intelligence apparatus, if somebody's coming from the civilian world, and let's say they don't, because a special operations background is really irrelevant most of the time, except for in very specific cases.
And the path to get into that in the military is very straightforward now.
Right.
But like, there's a lot of people who are just confused or scared, or I don't know. They think it's very mysterious how you get into the intelligence world.
Yeah, it's not that it's not hard to get into. It's just a matter of common sense. A lot of it. So. Unlike the movies, you don't have to have a special operations background. You don't have to have a language. You don't have to have any of those bolt-on things that you're going to get once you're there. What you have to, at least with CIA, I cannot speak for any of the other agencies, but at least with CIA, you have to have a college degree.
Right.
That's right off the bat. Or you have to have a projected graduation date before they'll even look at you. And
what about O&I?
O&I, it depends on the job.
Okay.
Some jobs, let's just say a 0132, which is an intelligence specialist. It's kind of an overarching intelligence job. You do not have to have one. You just have to have the specialized experience, that's in the announcement, the job announcement. We can talk about that in a minute. But there are certain jobs, like an engineer job, which still will fall under, because it all depends on what command you're going to will determine, is this an intel job or not. So an engineer, you have to have they call it the basic requirement. You have a basic education requirement of an engineering degree, and they even spell out what type of engineering degree, and you have to have the specialized experience. Some jobs you have to have, or you can have either the education or the specialized experience.
Okay.
So let's just say you don't have working with UASs, unmanned aerial vehicles and stuff like that, or surface craft, but you have a degree in certain things. You can use that in lieu of to get in, but it also depends on the grade. So anything that you can use education in lieu of specialized experience, usually a lower grade, like a 7, 9, 11, something like that. Because the way they look at it is, you have a base that we can build on from there. Whereas the higher grades are like, we expect you to
come in with this skill set.
This skill set. So with CIA, unless it's changed, again, I've been out of the game for a little while. All you have to do is go to US or CIA.gov, and actually USA Jobs actually advertises some jobs for the agency as well. You go on, you create a profile. I think it's good for a week, maybe 2. Maybe somebody in the comments will correct me. And once you set that up, it's only good for that week or 2. If you don't press send after that, it goes away. You have to redo it. Once you're on there, I always advise people, think about the job that you want going in. And this applies to the jobs that I recruit for, or if you're going to sign up for the uniformed services, go in with a job in mind. Because if you don't, you're coming out doing something that you didn't want to do.
All the people who come to me asking should I be a Marine or a Navy SEAL or should I be a Green Beret? And it's like, dude, what do you want to do?
What do you want to do? Exactly. Because if not, you're going to come out with a job you don't want with a promise on the back end, it's not open right now, but if you take this truck driving job, and nothing against truck, motor transport, but if you take this job in a year or 2, 6 months, it'll open up, and 3 years from now, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna kill him.
And then your command will let you go.
So go in with the job you want. Let's just say CIA.gov. Look at all the different jobs. They're very, very vague. Purposely, they're purposely, it always starts with the flowery, do you want a chance to serve your nation? Blah, blah, that kind of stuff. And then, it'll give a little brief description of what each job is. You're still going to be confused because having been there, done that sort of thing, you look at it and you're like, these all sound exactly the same.
I think these days you can pretty much go to Wikipedia and find the answer to everything.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Because that's another thing I noticed there's a lot of confusion about, the difference between an operations officer, a case officer, a paramilitary operations officer.
And let's also talk about the term spy, because that is something that people get wrong all the time.
An agent in office.
An agent.
We'll go with the broad thing first. So spy. When people think of spy, they think of Tom Cruise,
Right, that's it.
cutting open windows, and all the way into Dubai, and that kind of stuff. And there are people that do that stuff, surreptitious entries, and we've talked about this and stuff like that. But your run-of-the-mill spy does not do that. Intelligence officer does not do that. There are people that do that for them. So technically, a spy, and properly, a spy is the person that we recruit to steal the secrets for us, or go to the meeting and come back and tell us what that general said.
So a spy is actually the person with the access.
Yes.
So a spy is your engineer, is your nuclear engineer in Iran, or your Chinese diplomat.
Yes.
Those are spies.
Yes.
The CIA doesn't have spies. They have people who
we're in the spy business, but we have intelligence officers, and now we'll talk about that. The difference between an agent and an officer is an agent is that spy or an asset. They are the person that you are asking to betray their country. So we are officers. We are, CIA officers. We are the ones who go out, the intelligence officers who go out and collect. Technically, they're the ones collecting, giving it to us. But those also apply to support people, that apply their officers, security, their officers. We're officers. The FBI has agents. They are FBI agents. They're law enforcement agents. They do have officers, but I believe those are just like security officers. Those
but then that's where the term case officer comes, because they're basically case managers for the assets,
for the spies.
And they're no longer even called case officers. The old school is case officer. They're operations officers now. That's changed. A couple of things have changed now. Like the special activities, it's no longer a division, it's a center. Unless it's changed back.
Oh, it's a center now.
It's a center, so there's these little idiosyncrasies that in the whole of it don't make a big difference, but at the same time, they do. So the website's not really going to help with that. It will. It'll tell you the correct nomenclature. But once you apply for these jobs, because I think they ask you for 3 or 4, your top 4 jobs or whatever it is, you send it in. They'll come back with the fat envelope or the weight challenge envelope or the whatever. And then it goes from there. And it'll say on the website at a certain point, if you make it to this certain point, you're to stop telling people that you've applied, or tell them it just didn't work out. Because now the chances are greater that someone's going to brag about their son or their daughter and say, "Oh, my kid is applying for CIA." A great story about that is I don't know if he's there anymore, but he was the head of MI5. I believe it was, MI5. A couple years ago, he gets his appointment as the new chief for MI5. I believe it's MI5 or 6, and his wife promptly blasts that out on social media.
Of course.
So proud of my husband. Not just that, but puts a picture of their house. And everything. And it was like, oh my God. So,
how to dox yourself.
Yes, exactly. He might as well just been standing out there in his trunks, or his shorts.
There's a couple of DGSE guys who added themselves on LinkedIn like a year ago, I think.
And of course, somebody could say right now, well, aren't you outing yourself? I'm out from undercover. I can.
Now, what's the process for that? Because some people in the agency, when they leave, they can't say for a certain period of time that they cannot say that I work for the agency, and other people can.
So the whole reason for that is that if you putting on a resume or otherwise divulging that you worked for the agency, someone, and it's people's job to do this, could walk back where you were and what you did, and could affect ongoing operations. So ongoing or past operations.
They can also look at your paychecks, see who's paying you, identify the prop, find out other people who are working for that prop.
That's their whole job is to look at your footprint and be able to out you. And you may not even be the actual big fish. It could be, well, he's connected to this person. So that's the reason. So what they do is it's called rolling back your cover. So when before I left, I made it known that I was leaving. So I was told by my boss, contact, I forget the name of the office, and they'll tell you what to do. So they said, write this big flowery resume as if you were going to hand it into Fortune 500 company, put everything on it. And I'm like, what? So they put everything on it. So I did that. And they came back and said, take this out, this out, this out, change this, blah, 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 and literally just ripped it to shreds in a nice way. The whole reason is because they want to look at what you've done and how you're wording it, and would that cause a problem?
Right.
So I rewrote it, and they said, okay, this is acceptable. We'll keep it on file. You'll have yours, and from now on, if you want to change it or alter it in any way, you have to come through our PDB. So you have to go through them and say, this is what I want. Same thing with writing a book.
Right.
Any kind of written things, speeches, anything, you have to get their approval. So some people, mine was completely rolled back. They rolled, I guess I was that much of a pissant that, no, I didn't do enough that, or I wasn't connected enough to operations that it would have jeopardized anything. So they rolled my cover back completely. I can tell anybody that that's where I worked.
Right.
It's like I've talked to people who they have part of their cover dropped, but others are still intact. So they can say, yeah, I was in Bosnia, but they can't say, oh, I was in Iraq.
Yeah,
and it's like weird things like that.
Yeah, and it's the same on the resume. A good friend of mine, one of my best friends, he works for another agency now, but when he left CIA, they only rolled his cover back partway.
Right.
So when he went in for interviews, he would have to, they would say, when they bring up the gap in his resume, he would have to pull aside the senior person and say, listen, I worked for a 3-letter agency, or however he worded it. That's why I can't say anything. And then that person, he'd have to trust that person's not going to say anything.
Right.
The agency he's at now, it gave him a problem. Even though they knew where he worked, it still gave him a problem. Ultimately, it worked out. But so that's the whole point of rolling back someone's cover. Right. Some people never have it rolled back.
I talked to one guy who's a agency officer working. I won't even say where he was working, but he had a lot to do with like the wars in the Balkans and stuff back in the day. And he wrote 2 books. One of them, he had to sue the agency to get the PRB to release like information.
Yep.
Like he said, he wrote in one part of the book, I was meeting with a source with an asset in a field with football-shaped or sized rocks in it. And they redacted that. They're like, well, somebody could figure out that you met with the source because of the... He's like, dude, there's rocks all over the place.
They err way on the side of caution.
Yeah.
His second book, writing about some other work he did, actually here in the States, like more like political stuff, right? Writes the book, sends it into the PRB, and the PRB calls him in. He's like, okay, so, how much of it are you going to redact this time? Half of it? 2/3? And they're like, no, the whole thing. You can't even publish the title.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think some of it is arbitrary, but I understand them erring way on the side of caution.
Now, when it comes
some
to
of it, it's a political.
Yes, absolutely. Someone else saw that and was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's not just for like their version of OPSEC, like sources and methods. There's also a political screening that takes place.
Absolutely.
Now, how does the rollback happen in terms of mandatory declassification laws in the United States? Because what's the declassification?
35 years, I think.
Well, it's 10 years is the first mark where things have to be reviewed. And everything that's classified has to be reviewed within 10 or at 10 years, and then it has to meet certain criteria to stay classified. Otherwise, it's mandatory that it becomes
There's
declassified.
still stuff like OSS assets that are technically classified, and I imagine because some of them went on to become prime ministers in Europe and things like that after the war.
But I thought that after 60 years, there's a certain point in time where things have to be declassified.
There's everything from World War I is declassified now.
Yeah.
World War II, some stuff is still.
Yeah, I can't remember the actual.
I don't remember
the timeline. The timeline of that.
Yeah.
So does that also affect somebody's rollout? Does that also do you know or rollback in terms of?
I'm sure that it would, because I know people who mentors of mine who have had stuff that is still it's still not rolled back, and they're retired.
Okay.
And some of whom have taught at universities and things like that, and they're told they have to turn their curriculum in to be looked at, and it's like, nope, take this out, take this out, take this out, because now you really are getting it from the source. It's like, wow, Joe taught that, So maybe he was a part of that. So now let's look back on where he's been, and things like, and people are just will come to weird conclusions. So,
but wait, I thought the whole declassification process. I thought that with that, all you had to do is remove the word classified from the top of the document.
I was going to say, I hope you're about to laugh because absolutely not.
Isn't that the rule? Isn't that the rule?
Where's the camera?
No. Isn't that the rule that you just
don't look at me. One of the advantages I've had, working as a journalist is I got out of the Army as my TS was still being processed. So I never had a top secret clearance. I was never read on to anything. So it made my life a
lot easier. Yeah. Yeah, some people that I know would actually. So even something like your LES, your leave and earnings statement, from at least the agency, is technically a classified document. Mm-hmm. Some people would actually take and just cut off the top and the bottom and use it. And now, of course, I don't think that's ever hurt anybody.
If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for anybody else.
And they would use it. And
little Sharpie.
And of course, and there are ways that the agency has to deal with those kind of things. So like, whatever your cover is, and you can Google what the types of covers are, but I won't say what they are or what mine was, but your pay stubs while you're there will come from them.
Right.
So let's say you're going to buy a car, or you're going to mortgage a house, or whatever it is, whatever your cover agency or company or whatever it is that's what your pay stub will say on it. But some people, like when you get yours off your pay stub from your agency off the computer or whatever you do, you print it off, and you're like, I just want to go home and do my taxes, and you just cut the top and bottom off and take it home. That's illegal. You still can't. Can't.
Yeah. In fact, the agency has, or is it the agency or the ODNI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence? They have like very specific rules about when somebody's applying for a loan. Mm-hmm. The loan people have to send. That's exactly it. Have to send their stuff to them. They send it. Yeah, they send it.
Yep.
And it either gets like validated on their end, like yes, this is how much they make, or whatever else.
Yeah, and they're very rigid about that. Even when you're getting out or you're out, they'll give you a address and a fax number, and I think it may be a phone number, which nobody ever answers, to verify. And it's employment verification. Literally, all they will say is yes, he worked here, or no, he did not.
Yeah,
that's kind of like interesting / creepy to think about, but like allegedly there are entire floors on buildings here in New York City that are just empty.
Yeah.
And it's just a mailbox. Either there's nobody there. I know that there's others where it's like a secretary works there. It's just someone to pick up the phone because it's a backstop for
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's nuts. It's like you said, it's fascinating, but it's creepy that the stuff that goes on around us that we don't see, or don't know about. It's just but once you've been on, and I hate saying this, on the inside. You look at things differently.
What do you know, Powell?
Yeah.
Who does number 2 work for?
Overhead.
I mean, do you want? Can we talk about like NR? Is that something that?
I mean, I can. Yeah, on a basic level, because anybody, again, just because you can look it up, and I've told this doesn't mean that you should talk about it. But yes, the agency has a division that is devoted to domestic. I'm not going to say operations because that's not what they are. Domestic. Work in the United States, as in you co-locate with other agencies, FBI, whatever it is, JTTFs, Joint Terrorism Task Force, things like that, and those are only when there's two reasons for the National Resources or Domestic Division. Number one is to work with the law enforcement agencies in the United States if there is a foreign nexus to it.
Right, a foreign nexus. Because the CIA, by law, cannot spy
on American citizens.
On American citizens.
And even when there is a quote-unquote operation against American citizens, there has to be a foreign nexus to it. Meaning, your cousin is a known terrorist or a suspected terrorist or proliferation, counter-proliferation operation, works with nuclear missiles and he's trying to sell them to, Iran or something like that, and we know that. If you have regular contact with that person, well, by proxy, we're going to need to look at you.
Right.
But we don't take the lead on that.
Right.
That would be the FBI, and if there's a foreign nexus to it, if hey, we're drawing a blank on this guy's overseas travel. Do you know anything? Then maybe we can help there. The Fisa courts before this week,
this week,
exactly. What I said is very good about that.
Right.
Apparently, that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, the Fisa court doesn't seem to be the problem.
No,
the problem seems to be the information the Fisa court got.
That they're being given.
Right.
Exactly.
The DOJ's playing hanky-panky.
Yeah, and they were quick to. I never dealt with them like one-on-one, but I've read all the reports and all.
So a FISA court is a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, and what they do is they take the documentation that a government agency, the FBI, the CIA, whomever, gives them, and they take it at face value. They don't think there's dodgy shit going on, and they apply the laws of the United States to it, and then they determine whether or not a surveillance, whether wiretaps, surveillance efforts are legally warranted in this case.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's what a FISA court is.
I've also never been to a FISA court, but I mean, I've been told in the past that like that's supposed to be the FBI's bread and butter. So like the judges expect that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted when they get it. Like it's almost like a formality. I've been told.
And the FISA courts, from what I understand, they don't play like they're serious.
No.
Like
I thought it was like 3 judges have to sign off on or something like that. I don't think it's just one, but I know, at least again, I can only talk from the agency standpoint. I know that there were constant memos that would go out. When we were writing cables, these intelligence reports, if there is any nexus to a U.S. citizen in there, it will be that person's name will be stripped out. It will be looked at hard. Do they really have a nexus to this? And if they do, that goes in a completely separate eyes-only cable where very few people will see who that person is. Probably outside of those people who are authorized to see that. I could be wrong here, but probably the only other person that could say I need to know who that is the president. And they have the right to say that with anybody. It would be advised, if you don't really need to know, you don't need to know.
Right.
But when I was at the agency, they were huge on that. They were really big on, if it was a U.S. person. Now you could say an unidentified or unnamed U.S. person. But then again, the question would come, okay, you just said U.S. person, what is their nexus to this whole thing?
Right.
And if they had nothing to do with it, whether it was a phone number, even people who think, they're spying on our phones and stuff like that. NSA and CIA and whoever collects just billions and billions
so much
of data points.
Yeah.
And yes, U.S. persons, data is going to be in there somewhere, but again, that stuff is stripped out.
Right.
And if it's not needed, it's stripped out and it's looked over and it's scoured to make sure that people are not caught up in something that they shouldn't be.
Now, the whole sort of Hollywood image and probably media image too, the CIA as just this rogue element.
We've talked about this
like
times.
Conducting all these black ops, black bag operations. What was your impression of that and how the agency runs on a day-to-day business or day-to-day basis and things like that?
Okay, so I'll go back to before I joined. Before that, I believed all the same things. Not necessarily that they were the bad guys, because I was smart enough to know that, it can't be everybody there is bad.
Right.
Everything they do is bad. But yeah, I thought that, hey, maybe we'll go start a war while I'm there or something like that.
Right.
Whatever. Then when I got there, and I was blessed enough that two of my mentors were old school case officers. They were just amazing. One of whom he wrote a book. Hopefully he's still alive, prayerfully. He was a great guy. He was one of the first into Afghanistan. And he was just amazing.
What's his book?
First In, Gary Strong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just amazing, amazing guy. Sitting down and talking to him. And he said to me, I remember once on a break from a class, we were talking, and he said he loved the term Mickey Mouse shit. And he would say, don't believe all that Mickey Mouse shit you see on TV. He was like, we're not smart enough to run all this, this crazy stuff. He said, but in my day, he said, I've seen some things,
right.
Some things that
Mm-hmm.
ended up before committees.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously they're true, like the church committee and things like that.
And generally, though, generally, and tell me if I'm wrong, that's not like the agency, though. That is an individual or a group of people of like-minded individuals within the agency who kind of go outside
of the boundaries.
Yes,
absolutely. Now, in the conspiracy theorist defense, some things did come from the White House.
Sure.
You know, we see the Bay of Pigs.
Sure.
We see the plots that were, failed against Castro, things like that.
Right.
Those kind of things came from the White House.
That was all pre-church committee also.
Yeah, exactly. That was, yeah. So, and anybody that wants a movie that illustrates this stuff, not the Good Shepherd.
Yeah.
With Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Really, really good movie about that. As a matter of fact, I remember my ex-wife, we were watching that movie just before I EOD'd, I think is when, entered on duty, was when that movie came out. And there was a part where Angelina Jolie, they were at dinner or something like that with friends, and one of them turned to Matt Damon and said, "Oh, whatever his wife's name, says that you're working for the CIA now," or something like that. And he just looks at her. And afterwards he confronted her, and she was like, "I don't even know what it is you do, and you're a liar, blah, blah, blah." And I remember my ex-wife looking at me and being like, "Is that going to be you?" And I was like, "I don't know." I didn't. I was like, "No." I said, "This is a movie."
Can be very shady.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. There's actually a term for it.
Yeah.
COing somebody or case officering someone.
Yeah.
When you take the training that you be given on how to be a professional liar or elicit information or whatever, and using it on friends and family.
I was told like if you pull that shit on your station,
you're done. And because they're spotted in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And they do not play that stuff. But my wife now, she'd never been intel, and she could pick that up like that.
Yeah.
No. She should have. She's
What can you tell us about what can you tell us about the farm? Like, I know in movies, like they do all kinds of like surreptitious entry, and then shootouts in warehouses, like all the what's some of the other stuff you see like in the farm, in the CIA training in movies.
The worst was that one with Al Pacino.
Oh, The Recruit?
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, negative.
You're gonna approach a U.S. citizen in a foreign country and use him as an asset.
Yeah, negative. Yeah, especially, and you're definitely not gonna pull. I mean, anything's possible, but as far as I know, you're not gonna pull a trainee out of his training early to go do
who's the
operations.
Right.
Yeah,
who's the knock?
Yeah. So.
It's the girl with the art gallery who doesn't know anything about art.
Exactly.
She doesn't know a thing about art, but she's a knock.
Dave and I are Amarella's Fox Truthers now.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so the farm it's spying 101. And I really, really liked it. The outcome wasn't what I wanted, but it was amazing. So it's basically a crawl, walk, run sort of thing. So you'll learn it in a big classroom. You'll learn it again and practice it a little bit in like your small group.
Now, are people learning how to like cut holes in windows and disable security alarms? Safe cracking.
Yeah, no. You're learning the basic stuff, elicitation. You're learning how the recruitment cycle works. You're learning how to write intelligence reports. You're learning surveillance detection. You learn all those things. You'll learn a little bit about like black caches, things like that. And the way they'll do it is, again, you'll learn in the classroom, you'll learn it and practice it a little bit in a small group, and then you'll go out and do it in a controlled setting, meaning the area outside of the farm. Once you set foot, or actually once you get out into your car, you're fair game. You could be followed, you could be stopped, whatever it is, and when you come back, you'll run into little roadblocks and all this other stuff. And it's just a way for you to practice before you actually go out and do it. Right. Some people, that's what caused them to fail. They just, one thing or another, or a couple of things caused them to fail. Either getting caught with like documents. You have a concealment device, but it's not zipped all the way, or
Your prison purse.
or like some person in my class, she had all her documents on her car seat, like out in the open when she went through a roadblock. So I mean, it happens. There's that, but it could be something as little as, or not as little as, but it could be something as simple as you just don't have the personality to approach someone.
Right.
And so, if you don't have, they always taught us one thing, we can give you all the equipment, we can give you all the training, we can't give you a personality.
Right.
If you're not a people person, it's just not for you. And I've seen introverts who, when they're doing that job, just completely blossom. And then I've seen people who are extroverts who would get in front of someone and just fall apart. So,
right. We have a question from Alex, real quick. Alex Bennett.
And Jerwayne popped in, and he says you worked in Wakanda. You just don't want to admit it.
Did you about Wakanda? Did you hear that our free trade agreement with them just ended?
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Wakanda?
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. So Alex, thanks for the donation. Alex said, I finally made it. Welcome. Just wanted to ask what are the church committee hearings thoughts on the UPS shootout, and how did Toys for Tots start?
Wow,
we are all over the map.
We are all over the map.
So the church committee, I can't give you all the details because I don't know all of them, but basically it was, in a nutshell, the agency got caught doing all
dirt.
the stuff
doing dirty.
Books say we did.
Yeah. And they were bad at it. Is why they got caught.
Yes, they were bad at
it.
it.
And here's the thing about it's like you say, it's like, or the case officer told you that we're not that smart. It's like, if you're going to plan an assassination or try to do some elaborate assassination with an exploding guitar, the only people who are good at assassination are people who do assassinations on a regular basis.
Yes, right.
And America has never had that kind of that background.
Yeah.
So we're just doing like wazoo shit because it's sort of like a Wile E. Coyote type thing, like, oh, this will work.
Exploding guitar. Who the fuck would do that?
Right. I mean, countries like they can put an irradiated pellet into an umbrella tip. Countries that can do stuff like that have a long history of doing stuff like that. So
however,
they're good at it.
In the defense of that, wasn't it a Taliban guy or Al Qaeda that had the bomb in his hat and killed the I think it was a minister or something like that?
Oh, they did the bomb camera right before 9/11.
Yeah, but I think there was a guy who had a bomb in his hat and made it into a meeting.
A few years back, there was the butt bomb in Saudi Arabia.
Remember that?
Yeah,
too?
but that's taken it. That though is being a suicide bomber, which takes it to a whole new level because part of the planning of we were snipers, and part of the entire planning, 70%, 80% of the planning of a sniper op is how the hell do I get out?
Yeah, exactly.
Once I take that shot, now how do I get out? Because I'm not going down for
they only have
this.
to get it right once,
Exactly.
one time.
And I mean that's a lot of times that's what it is. Like you can train probably a chimpanzee to shoot a rifle accurately at 200 or 300 yards. You know what I mean? But the mission planning, infill into the place, and then more importantly, now you've taken that shot. Everybody in the area knows somebody's out there. Now the exfil, So like when we're talking about suicide bombers and that type of assassination attempt, I think that's a little bit different because you're missing half the planning consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the church committee, all of this stuff came to light, and I believe it was named after a senator, right? That's what.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he basically said, "What the hell?" And we had to come clean with it.
It was a lot of the reporting that Cy Hirsch did back in the day, assassinations. The CIA, they worked with the Italian Mafia back in the day.
Absolutely.
Well, because the Italian Mafia was good at assassinations.
Because they're willing to do things.
They had people who knew how to do that.
And on a side note with that, you just said, these reporting, the media is a spy or the intelligence world's best friend and worst enemy at the same time. Because they can, if we're talking covert action, they can be your best friend because they can get that story out there most of the time unwillingly, that we want pushed forward.
Right.
That, I already know where the comments, just get ready for the comments. That is not supposed to happen here in the United States. More so in foreign countries, it's not this simple, but it's like, hey, this story probably should go out on the wire at 6 o'clock. That sort of thing. But it can also be our worst enemy because you have things like recently where that former asset of ours, who was living, I believe it was in Virginia or Maryland, was outed, and I believe it was NBC, and Jerwayne can correct me because we were talking about it. Just NBC knocked on the guy's door, his front door. So the media can
I remember that.
Yeah, so the media can be our, worst enemy or best friend. And back then, that series of stories, about our attempted assassinations and, starting revolutions and stuff, it blew up. And it made a lot of changes that are still in place today. The clamp that has been put on covert action, and that's the other thing that should be clarified too. The CIA specifically does a few things. It's not just recruit spies. They also do covert action.
Right, which is their Title 50.
Yes. Yes.
Which gives them powers that the United States military does not have.
Absolutely.
Right.
And those are all the things that I cannot talk about.
Right.
So we do covert action as well. And there are other things that go within their special activities and all that.
I will point out, since I'm not covered under any NDAs or anything, it's covert action. Some of those things we never hear about.
Absolutely.
Other things you definitely hear about in the news every day. So like drone strikes in Pakistan.
Absolutely.
That are CIA-run drones. That falls under Title 50. Paramilitary operations in Afghanistan or Iraq that are, with CIA proxies.
Yes.
You guys hear about that in the press all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff, if not all of it, falls under Title 50.
Absolutely. And also it's worth noting that many of what looks like purely military operations that you see, the CIA
has a
hand in it, a component in it. Bin Laden, for instance, we've all seen Zero Dark 30. That was a classic example of the work of the agency coming to fruition at the end of a rifle.
And allegedly, the dev group operators were operating under Title 50 auspices. Leon Panetta kind of beat around the bush on exactly saying what happened there, but for them to do that cross-border operation to Pakistan.
Right, because Title 10, the military works under Title 10, and really they cannot go into a friendly country or they can't. They can't.
It's not a declared war zone.
It's not a declared war. So if the president can't authorize the United States military to go into a country without a formal declaration of war for like 30 days. But when it comes to a friendly country or a neutral country, that it becomes completely different.
Yes.
So
and Jerwayne chipped in $5 into our bucket of gold. He said that's the Black Mafia contribution.
Oh, we should talk about
the Black Mafia.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. Can you talk about the Black
opened
Mafia?
the Pandora's box.
I have a tendency to do that.
Let's also awareness, Chris. Thank you also very much. For that. Thoughts on Ground Branch and favorite, and then we'll get into the Black Mafia and everything. Thoughts on Ground Branch.
Lock the door.
Favorite assault rifle, secondary, and sniper rifle while with the CIA. Thanks. Thoughts on Ground Branch?
The GBers that I work with were amazing, absolutely amazing personnel. I always felt bad for them because not only were they working the paramilitary side of things, they were also expected to be a case officer, operations officer. So they were expected to, while you're training that, XYZ fledgling military, you're also going to see if you can get intel on their commanding officer, whatever it is. But they were absolute professionals. They were awesome, personnel. I also did some limited work with Maritime Branch folks, which we call them the yacht drivers because some of them literally do drive agency yachts. And then Air Branch, did a lot of work with them.
Yeah.
They're They're pretty. That stuff was pretty cool.
Their Russian Hinds.
Secret airplanes.
Secret airplanes, and buying up front companies.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Ground Branch falls under Special Activities, Special Operations Group. I don't know if it's Special Operations Group now or.
I think it's center, or the group within the center.
Yeah.
I believe it's still group.
And they are essentially the agency's paramilitary wing. They're very, very. What most people think of the agency, what most movies portray of the agency, they're actually portraying more of a Ground Branch type of person. But Ground Branch is actually. I mean,
they're small. Very tiny
compared to the budget, compared to the size of the agency at large. It's very small.
Before 9/11, there's 10 people in Ground Branch.
It was tiny. Yeah, it was tiny.
Yeah.
And then and so.
Yeah, they just got.
I can say. I know some people have gone over to Ground Branch, some are Special Forces dudes. Delta Force Sergeant Majors end up over there. So, you get some guys who have a shitload of special operations experience.
Yeah.
And coming out of the global war on terrorism, while I was there, that was a prerequisite. It was okay, great, you were in the Marine Corps and you were infantry. Did you see combat? Yes. How much did you see? Then they would decide where they want.
And you tell them you've seen C-beams glittering.
Exactly.
Who
you think killed Kirkman?
Yeah. and Ground Branch does have its. It does have its own pipeline where guys. If guys are going the ops officer route, then guys would go through Ground Branch to the ops school, to the farm or whatever, and then back into Ground Branch. Yep. But they don't stay there forever.
No.
They
a lot of them will do a traditional tour.
Yeah.
They'll come out and do it.
And then you have your other guys there that that's what they do. That's all they do. Yeah. And they're not ops officers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not expected to do.
Actually, that ties into what we were talking about earlier. As the other side of it is, aside the ops officer, there's also the PMOOs.
Those, so those are
what you were just
GBs.
talking about.
Those are GBs, air branchers, maritime branchers. So it's just paramilitary operations officers.
Right.
So basically, you can split that in two. You're expected to do paramilitary stuff. You're expected to also do ops officer stuff.
Right.
Do you have to have if you're coming from, say you're an SF guy, JSOC operator, do you have to have a college degree to go and do that?
I don't know because... you do. Okay.
Yes.
There you go.
And how would you go about, because I get asked this, you guys probably do too, if you are one of those guys, if you are a 29-year-old Green Beret getting out of the Army and you want to apply, you just go onto the CIA website.
There is a spot for it. There's a paramilitary operations.
I see it advertised in Foreign Affairs magazine. So people still act like it's this mysterious thing, but
it's not.
There's a process.
I will say probably though, and I can't say this for sure because I was not Special Activities Division or Center, but I would assume that once you hit send, if they see PMOO on there as one of your things, you're probably vetted pretty heavily from people who are already there.
Right.
Because they have a pretty broad spectrum across the community, special operations.
Yeah, and everybody in the military, everybody has a hall file, basically.
Exactly.
You're unofficial, good dude, no.
Absolutely.
Great to drink with, but not so much on the operations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that has a place.
I'm not going to name any names of interesting characters who have passed through those particular halls.
Quite a few. Did we answer all their questions?
Favorite assault rifle and
even bigger than that. Again, I think people have this idea of Sam Fisher and Splinter Cell that when you join the CIA, they give you the goggles that have both night vision and thermals in them, and you're doing a split in the hallway at night with 2 suppressed pistols. No. What's the gear like when you show up?
How long at the farm do you spend on working on your splits? That's what we will.
Van Damme.
No, you're expected to have them down pat by the time you get there.
Yeah. So if you want to join the CIA, you have to be able to do the splits.
But for real, how different is the gear, if at all, from what you would find in a military unit?
Okay, so not everybody gets gear. That's first of all. So it all depends on 2 things. One, your track. If you're going PMOO, that sort of thing. Even if you're going air branch or maritime branch, you get a kit. you'll go through a separate training after you go through your cert course. You'll go through a special training somewhere down south, further south than Virginia, and then you'll get your kit. I don't know if it's standard or not because I've never been around all of them, but it's basically what you would see on a special operator. I know most people love that word. Let's go to the other side of that. You can go through, your cert course, your operations officer, staff operations officer, targeter, cert course, whatever it is. If your next assignment is not to a non-permissive environment or a war zone, I shouldn't even say non-permissive because Russ is non-permissive, but a war zone, you're not getting any kit. You're not getting anything special
because
at all.
You're not. I don't want to say deniable, but if you're there under State Department cover, you are not carrying a pistol around Moscow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now the other side of that is if you're going to Iraq, Afghanistan, or something like that, you will carry. You're expected to carry at the least sidearm.
Glock.
At the least. Sometimes it's an M4. It just depends. And that's we were talking about this. That's the way some people got out of going overseas. They would say, "I'm not carrying a weapon," and they're like, "Well, I guess you can't go overseas then." Yeah. And of course,
and it's not the military where you have to go where they. I mean, people have to understand that, like, if you're in a government agency and you say, "I'm not going to Afghanistan," they go, "All right, well, that's going on your eval."
Yeah. I mean,
that's it.
It goes in your hall file, where people talk.
I mean, I know. You've seen too, Dave. I mean, when you're like, even like just like an airborne school, and somebody freezes up in the door, it's like, nope, not going. You get a jungle boot to the back.
Yeah, exactly.
You are going.
Yeah.
No,
you got on the plane, you're getting off the plane.
No, and I'll tell you, the agency is one of the best. Some of the best. Finaglers I've ever. Yeah, their choppers are amazing. Finaglers I've ever seen. Like people. When I was there, everybody wanted to go over to the war
the CIA has more money than God, right?
They do. And I'll be honest with you, when I went to Afghanistan, I went to, I forget where it is you go, the name of the office, and I probably couldn't say it anyway, to do the processing for it. And they were like, "Hey, you ever been to REI?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, get to know it. Here's your budget."
$2,000.
Yeah, and they were like, and they said, "Here's the standard. This is what you have to have.
Yeah.
Anything else over that is up to you." And I was like, "Oh my!" Now, of course.
So you went and got FUBU and Fat Farm and
Hell yes, Pele, all that shit. I was in there and I'm like, sleeping bags. Most of the stuff I never used. Most of it. You are issued a vest, bulletproof vest. You're issued that. You're issued an M4 when you get there. You're issued your Glock when you get there. That's it. Other than that, you bring what you have on the list, and literally you don't use most of it. The only other thing they tell you is don't pet the stray cats and dogs. That's it. Seriously. Well, there was a kid that died there.
He
died from rabies. Really? Yeah, he got bit. Yeah.
We had a guy in my battalion. So like in Iraq, like raw sewage in the streets, and there were just like pits of raw sewage in the streets. So like a bunch of Rangers are out on patrol in the night. This was in my battalion. I wasn't there when this happened. There's a mechanic in the unit, and the mechanics was like, take us out on an op. So finally they were like, okay, dude, like come with us. You can come out with us. So they were like dismounted, patrolling in Iraq at night under night vision. You can't see shit. And this kid fell into one of those pits and actually went underwater.
Oh my God. I would like to see
and I was told that like he was on the brink of death.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I believe it.
I mean, can you imagine the size of that gamma globulin shot he
Bro,
must have gotten?
I can't even begin to imagine.
I may have heard stories of ops officers, analysts, reports officers, miscellaneous people who apparently, rumor has it, that outside the door of the agency's primary compound or primary building in Iraq, in the Green Zone, there was a clearing barrel. And it was policy for everybody.
Bro, I heard this story about Chapman, not
it was policy for everybody to clear their weapon before going into the building, and there were so many negligent discharges that they finally just said,
got rid of the barrel.
They're just like, just don't touch your pistol. Just like put it in your holster. You don't have to clear it. Just don't touch it while you're in here, because like there were so many.
Yeah, my friend in 5th group had some agency guys come through their AOB, and agency guys, like one of them didn't have a sling for his rifle even. And so my buddy, who's a 18 Bravo, goes and gets him the sling, like, here you go. And the guy just looks at the sling, like looks at his rifles, like, can you put it on for me?
Yeah. Now we're not talking about ground branch. We're talking about like people who have, like your standard ops officer who goes to the farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there is a weapons course that they may go to after that, but it's a familiarity course more than anything.
Yes.
Yeah. You're talking about some dude who has like a degree.
Is it a 2-week course or 4-week course?
The M4 is 4 weeks.
Because there's
M4 and Glock, both 4 weeks.
And then, but is there a shotgun? I think there's a shotgun.
I think you do shotgun fam while you're in the one of those 2 courses. Yeah. I mean,
they're not all trained.
No, it's not the high speed. Everybody's karate certified. No.
And sniper rifles while you're with the CIA. What's the deal with that? Does every agent does everybody get a sniper rifle?
They do not. They don't even see one.
No,
because then somebody's not doing their job if you see it. No. Again, that would be a ground branch thing and part of a completely separate training package. Yeah, so no.
And I imagine that if there were sniper rifles in ground branch, are probably. Generally, they're based on what people were using in the service, what they're familiar with.
Yeah, whatever they're familiar with.
Whether it's a Win Mag 3, a Win Mag 300 Win Mag or a
that, or I mean, this is getting a little bit deeper into the weeds. But I mean, ground branch or other paramilitary elements also request military assets.
Absolutely,
and you get JSOC guys, or actually a lot of Rangers. Going out on operations with them.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I mean, all the time we worked with other elements, up to and including even State Department personnel, or it just depends on what you're doing, what the goal is, the operation is. We'd work with them. Sometimes that bit us in the ass.
Yeah.
So like I said, when you're in a war zone, I can't speak for Iraq necessarily, but in Afghanistan, we're required to have a vest and a sidearm at the least when we go out. Not all agencies were like that. So at one point I was at the embassy in Kabul and I was standing outside near the gate waiting for a ride to come, and there were 2 people behind me, male and female, and I heard the female say, "Well, who's that guy? Why is he wearing that?" The guy said, "Because he's agency." He's like, "What?" He's like, "He's CIA." I just turned around, looked at the guy, and he's like, I was like, yeah. So, I mean...
And now your family's going to disappear.
Exactly. His family is. Yeah. So, I mean, and it would make my skin crawl, and, they know what they're doing, but that they weren't required to wear this stuff because we were required to, most of the time, take a vehicle, even between the short distance between the station and the embassy or whatever, vice versa. Whereas they could just walk around the street. So I would be driving by my up armored, vehicle, and they're just walking around outside. I'm like, oh, it made my skin crawl. But I mean, there's a reason for that, which I'm assuming is you don't want to be out in this community with these people who are vulnerable, all up armored. You got all this gear on and stuff like that, and they're like, well, what about me? Doesn't make them feel any safer. So I assume that's the reason why.
We take just 30 seconds to make the obligatory YouTube call to action promo. I just want to thank everyone who stopped by to watch tonight. The whole bunch of people watching right now. Thanks for coming. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon below so you get notified the next time we go live. If you listen to the podcast version, please subscribe to SoundCloud, and Dave and I are going to work on getting it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff.
We're working on that now.
We'll figure all that out. Also, if you're interested in supporting the stream financially, look in the description below. There's a link to Patreon there, and it'll have some different tiers. And even if you just want to chip in $1 a month, It's awesome right now. I mean, right now we're just trying to get funded to kind of support paying rent for the studio.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit more than halfway there right now. So thank you everyone who has helped us out with that.
Yeah.
And as we meet our finance goals, we'll be able to, improve this place little by little.
Yeah.
And we won't just have these bomb bags behind us. We'll get like a legit background and stuff like that. But thank you everyone. And if you take a look at that, please consider a small donation.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
That goes for my kids too. I know you're watching, so.
And when Jack says even $1 a month, like we have 1.4 thousand, 1,400 subscribers right now.
Wow.
I mean, if everyone were giving us $1,
We'd be set, and then some.
We'd be, absolutely. So, what happened to my screen? So, and thanks to everybody who is giving us the tips in the chat too. We'll try to get to everybody's questions, but obviously, if you have something pressing, just send us $1 on there. Just send us $2 on there.
I did want to ask you before I forget about it. Like Dave and I did like a whole episode talking about the spook who sat by the door. And I want to ask you that question because, I mean, it's one thing to hear it from like two white guys doing a movie review of this film about black militancy. But I wanted to hear your opinion on it because actually you were the one who recommended it to me. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then actually Jerwayne was the second guy who was like, yeah, you got to go see this movie. Yeah. And I was like, okay, fuck it. I gotta track it down. Yeah. You told me the story. You actually found the VHS tape during your training at the CIA.
I did, yeah.
Accidentally.
So down at the farm, without going crazy into it, part of surveillance detection is, the whole point of it is to look as natural as possible so that anyone that might be following you would say, okay, this guy's boring, let's leave him alone. Now I can go do whatever it is I'm supposed to do, a meeting or whatever. Part of that is what are called cover stops. You will have pre-planned places that look natural on your route to stop for a certain amount of time to determine. Number one, it looks natural. Everybody goes to the store.
It falls into your pattern of life.
Falls into your pattern of life. Number two, it gives you a chance to probably spot, or hopefully spot, anyone that might be following you. And number three, it also keeps you on a time schedule so that when you finally get to where you're supposed to go, you and that person are getting there at the same time, around the same time.
And part of that, number two, is it allows your counter surveillance team also to have preset in this area.
Absolutely, because they know where you're going to be, so they can sit and say, okay, post 2 saw these people there. Now we're seeing them again at post 4.
Right.
Likelihood that you're being followed by somebody.
Yeah.
So
the Russians pushing the baby stroller around.
Exactly. Yeah. The old babushka pushing her shopping cart. So on one of my training cover stops, there was God, this is going to tell how old I am, a Hollywood Video, an old video store, and this one was closing. And so I stopped in there before, and it was just normal. But when I go in there this time, the shelves are almost empty. There's boxes everywhere, and I'm like, "Are you closing?" The guy's like, "Well, we're closing, but everything's on sale. Go look around, find whatever you want." So I'm looking through. I'm grabbing these DVDs and video tapes and stuff, and I find this one box, and I'm going through it, and I open this, look at this one VHS tape, and my first instinct was like, what the hell is this? Because it said spook in big letters, and I'm like, excuse me?
Right.
And so then I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, I turn it over and I read it, and I'm like, wow, this is really awesome, because it says on the box basically that this movie was so controversial that the government wanted it gone.
Yeah.
They didn't want people to watch this. So I was like, oh, I gotta have it now. So I go up to the guy, and I'm like, hey, I'll take these, blah, blah, blah. And he looks at it, and he's like, where'd you find this? So I said, back there, in that box. And he's like, you sure you want to buy it? And then I knew. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I want this. So I got it for like $4 or something like that. So I watch it, and it's very over the top. I'm not going to tell everybody what it's all about, but
we did a whole.
Oh, you did a thing on it. Okay.
Thing on it, yeah.
So basically, it takes place in the '60s. This guy. So the agency first decides, this whole civil rights thing is getting out of hand. We need to get ahead of it. Why don't we get some black officers? Bring them in. We don't have to do anything with them.
Right,
We'll train them up and we'll just stick them in a hole.
Right.
So that's basically what they did. They recruit a bunch of them, but there's this one guy in there, and he's like, Joe Schmo, businessman or college guy off the streets, and they train this guy up and all, and he does really well in his class, which starts to worry some of the powers that be. You're like, oh shit. So eventually they just literally stick him in a hole. They stick him in the basement, and there really is a basement at CIA headquarters. So, and there are offices and stuff down there, operations offices and stuff like that. But they stick him down there. He's like filing papers and all that, and he keeps, like, when are you going to send me out? And they're like, just do your thing, boy. So, eventually he leaves, but he takes that training with him back to Chicago. With him, meets up with his old friends, blah, blah, blah. Hey, we have this meeting going, and it's like a Black Panther meeting. And he basically volunteers to help train these guys in counter-revolutionary warfare. And it's like, ambushing cops, robbing banks, all this other stuff. And basically it turns into a full-blown war.
Yeah,
and
full-blown war.
Yeah, full-blown war in the movie.
Yeah.
And that... Obviously, you can see why the government at the time, the real U.S. government, didn't walk this out there. So that is literally my favorite. Well, all right, besides the volleyball scene in Top Gun, and my favorite is my favorite movie of all time. And the book is incredible. And there's there's a couple of them, but there's some good clips on YouTube from the author. He sat down with radio stations. I think I sent it to you.
I was watching it when I was doing some research.
Where he talks about how people came to him and were like, listen, you can't do this. And he was like, to hell with you, I'm going to do it. And I recommend everybody watch it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And what they took that movie. I did some research when we watched it. They took that movie and when they put it in storage, the original print, they gave it a different title. They gave it so nobody could find it.
They said it was like Bambi or something.
Nobody could find it.
Absolutely.
And see, I am of the opinion, like having watched it, I'm of the opinion, because he was a revolutionary in college, I'm of the opinion that he went to the CIA with the intent of learning that stuff to take it back.
Yeah. I mean, and that of course it doesn't say that, but it would make sense. But you definitely can see why the government didn't want that out there at that time.
Supposedly the feds went and harassed United Artists, and they got the movie out of theaters.
And they surveilled like movie theaters that did have it before they took it out.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And the actor never got another lead role.
No.
He had very few roles actually after that.
Yeah. It was
Lawrence Cook, I think his name was. The actor's name.
Yeah, it was a great movie. I recommend it to you.
So tell us about the Black Mafia. That leads
me to this.
Yeah, because I'm told this movie is like an underground classic with the Black Mafia at the agency.
I can't say that it is or isn't. I would assume it is. It's one of mine. So, in a nutshell, the Black Mafia is a group of... it started out, and it's largely African-American black officers who basically look out for one another. And the whole point of it was, as it was explained to me by one of my mentors there, was that there was a time when either there were no black officers or the ones that were relegated to support jobs.
The copy room.
The copy room, stuff like that. And so when we started being able to be, branch out more into operations, things like that, we didn't have as, the mentors that were needed or the backing that we needed. So we decided, let's take it upon ourselves. Not to segregate ourselves, but to say, hey, I've been there. Let me help you. Let me help guide you through it. It wasn't like, hey, I just killed somebody at 2 a.m. I need you to help me hide a body. It wasn't like that. It was more professionally, let me help you navigate this, My mentor, I won't say his name because I don't know what his status is. Honestly, I don't even know if he's alive. I pray he is. No, I believe he is. And Jermaine can probably tell me. He was just the funniest guy in the world. I loved him. And anybody who's been there and has been in the Black Mafia will know what I'm about to say. Before I met with him, I had been talking to another black officer, senior. He was a division chief, actually. And he said to me, when you sit with him, whatever you do do not stare at his pinky. And I'm like, okay, that's all he would tell me. So we meet in the cafeteria at headquarters. We sit down and I'm talking to him, and the whole time I'm like, don't look, don't look. Well, inevitably,
right.
I looked, and his pinky nail was like 2 inches long, probably longer. Every other fingernail was perfectly manicured. I'm like, so I'm staring at it, and also it was like a movie. I look up like this, and he's like, "The fuck are you staring at?" And he was like, "Don't ask me," and I was like, Roger that. So to this day, I don't know what that pinky finger was for.
It's gonna keep me up.
Yeah, it's really bothered me. But he was, I guess the word is indispensable. He was incredible at helping me navigate the system. Not just as a black man. Not just that. Mostly it had nothing to do with that.
I mean, everybody. The way I understand is like, especially for case officers or ops officers, like everybody needs a mentor, a sponsor.
A CDAD. Yeah, everybody has to have it. And he just was. I was able to get this is how you do it because this is the way it was back in the day and why it needed to change.
Right.
And so I met him. I met. There was a gentleman named, and I can't think of his last name now, Willie. He was in charge of Special Operations Group. He was, I believe he was chief when I was there. This dude had the coolest afro I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like salt and pepper. It was just a man. You ever see, what's that movie with Eddie Murphy? Beverly Hills Cop?
Yeah.
You remember his chief back in Detroit?
Yeah.
That was Willie.
Yeah.
But with an afro. He was just incredible. And through that, so what they would do is have, like, besides their one-on-one mentor meetings, they would do dinners and things like that. We'd meet at restaurants and all that stuff. And it grew to, I'm sure it had grown before I had gotten there, but it wasn't just black officers. There were Hispanic, there were white, there were Indian.
Jerwayne says Nick Fury.
That's about right, yes. Nick Fury, yes. And it was, they would have some incredible meetings, like literally like you're in this restaurant and this big long table, they push tables together, just all these people just eating dinner and talking, and always in there was, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? And it wasn't, sometimes it would be, hey, I need to call in a favor. Like, for instance, I had an issue where, again, my youngest daughter was sick at the time, and I needed to be able to be up in Jersey, but I still wanted to work. So it was, someone had suggested Philadelphia. Why don't you work in Philly or New York? Somebody reached out to both COSs, chiefs of station, they both said, sure. Well, then where I was, my home office at the time, my boss was like, absolutely. He's the one that set it up. Somebody above him said, no. It was a career planner. It was like, no.
Yeah.
No. It's, it's not conducive for his career. Anybody that knows me knows I don't care if I'm about to ascend to the presidency. If one of my children or my wife needs something, everything else gets dropped, as long as it's legitimate.
Right.
And in the case of a sick child, you're not telling me, no, I was ready to leave. I was ready to quit.
Right.
I get a phone call, and I doubt she's watching, and I won't say her name, but I get a phone call, and it was like God himself calling. It was the wife of a former division chief. And that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And she was just there as a contractor, and Jerwayne will know exactly who I'm talking about. When I heard her voice, and she called me by my pseudonym name, not my true name, and she's like, are you busy right now? And I was like, oh, no ma'am. And she's like, can you meet me in the cafeteria? I said, sure. So I met her down there, and she knew the full brief before. I didn't have to tell her anything. So that's something that not just the Black Mafia does well, but the whole agency, especially at headquarters, word travels fast. Mm-hmm. So she came to me and said, I heard there's a problem with getting you up there. And I said, yes, but she's like, nope, it's already taken care of. Somebody went to my branch to the division and said, he will be going to where his daughter is. And I didn't argue with it.
Wow.
Yeah, it moved literally within an afternoon, it was done. And now some people might say, well, that's bullshit because that's not fair. And at this point, when it came to my child, I didn't care. It'd be something different if I was like, hey, I want to go to Bonn, I want to go to Germany and
Right.
you're standing in my way.
Right.
That'd be different. But when it came to my child, that I was
You pull whatever string.
whatever strings I had to pull, and that is one of the reasons I'm forever grateful to the agency. There's some things, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. There are some things that they do or did that I don't like, but that right there was incredible. But that also comes to, that's not an institutional thing necessarily. They will say it is, but it's not. It comes down to the individual bosses that you have.
Sure.
And I've been blessed that overall, most of my bosses have been incredible people.
Yeah.
Where, like, even when I was in Philly, if, like, they would ask about my daughter or, what's going on with this or what's going on with that, my boss would just walk up and be like, shut your computer down, go home. Or to anybody else, like other people in the office, he'd listen. And if he heard somebody's kid was sick, he'd be like, why are you here? He would always say, national security will always be national security. Your family needs you, go home. And they would just send you home.
Yeah.
Whereas there were other bosses who national security is God or my life. And if I'm here, you're here. And they would make you stay, which is whatever.
Right.
It is what it is. But I learned a lot about leadership between the Marine Corps and the agency about how you're supposed to treat people.
What is the, I'm just curious, what's the real life history about, I don't even want to say necessarily integration, but the CIA starting to hire black people? When did that begin? How did that come about? Because I'm sure, the film we were talking about is a film.
yeah, it's a film. It could have happened that way. I honestly don't know the complete history of it. I couldn't even tell you. Jermaine might be able to, and others might be able to tell you who the first black officer was. I'm sure I knew it at one time. But I do know that most of them started out in the beginning as like clerks and things like that. I know there were some who were hired as case officers, but that was few and far between.
What time frame is this?
This is probably just before Vietnam.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Was it 59? Like 69?
Yeah, because I
would
know,
say late 50s,
Yeah,
early
probably,
60s.
yeah.
I know it really started to happen like during and after Vietnam because they brought in a lot of military guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say. There's somebody, and I cannot think of his name now, who comes to mind that was in Vietnam as a case officer.
I think I know who you're talking about.
And so, I mean, it did happen. It's just, I think the issue was much like the Marine Corps up to and just after World War II, the culture inside the agency and inside the government period did not keep up with the changing times.
Right.
Like the Marine Corps, for those who don't know, they were the last to desegregate. They were staunchly opposed to it. They were like, we are not.
The Army desegregated right after World War II, I think.
More so during, it was towards the end of it, the Marine Corps was staunch. They were like, absolutely not.
The Marine Corps stubborn?
Yeah, oh my God.
When was because the Army was actually desegregated and then Woodrow Wilson resegregated them.
Yes.
Did they? I mean,
Yeah.
I know, like, even in Korea, there was an all-black Ranger
All black
company.
battalions, yeah, and companies, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know with the Marine Corps, they had the Montford Point Marines, but they were non-combat units. They landed on Iwo Jima, as far as I know, and most of the island hopping campaigns, but always in support roles. Some of them saw combat because, by necessity, that's what just happened.
But that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny to think about too, because isn't like the narrative that like we used like poor black disenfranchised people as cannon fodder and like threw them into the front lines.
Yeah.
But I mean, like some of the even like stuff, studies about Vietnam. I mean, most of the kids that died were white middle class.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
It wasn't quite like that.
Did you feel as though at the agency? I mean, I feel like it's a fairly liberal organization in the sense of most, like a lot of people there are like Ivy League grads, or they're coming from these liberal institutions. But I don't think that liberal nor conservative really makes a person racist. You know what I mean? Like,
no, of course.
But so, do you feel, in your experience, like did you feel like did you have to deal with like a lot of racial issues or racism or anything like that?
There was one, and I started to tell you before we went on air about it actually. Only twice, once in training and this I think was a test, and once actually while I was after training. So once I was at headquarters, suit and tie, I'm at work, and I go to get on an elevator, door opens, and there's a white lady standing there, older, and literally did the bag clutch, like, and went in the corner.
Yeah.
And I looked at her, and I was like, really? And she just looked at me, and I was like, oh man, I just walked off, walked away. That was one.
Yeah.
And then once when I was in training, they throw different scenarios at you to see how you're going to react. So I had a guy who was being turned over to me, so I had to do that part of the training. So the case officer before me, led up to in the weeks or months before saying, hey, I have to go back home to be with my family. This person's going to take over. They're great, blah, blah, blah. And so when it came down to the turnover, I met this person, and right off the bat, it was a role player, but right off the bat, he was hostile. Actually, it was 3, because you know the story in the bar. You guys know. So I'm talking to this guy, and he's just so rude to me. And again, it's training, but by this point, you're so immersed in it that it's real.
Right, right.
So this guy, all of a sudden my brain clicked, and he's like, this guy's called you boy like 3 times. And I'm like, okay, it's on now. So he kept saying it, and so part of the recruitment cycle is you're gonna offer them money. And
Sure.
it's the saying is it's not a recruitment unless they take money. So I kept trying to push money on this guy, and it was just pissing me off that he wasn't taking it. So at one point, he says, and I had my hands on the chair like this, and he says, boy, I'm not going to tell you again that I'm not going to take your damn money. My knuckles turned white, he said later, because you get a brief afterwards. And I started to raise up off my chair, and then on my training, sat back down. So afterwards, he said, I swear I was looking for the door, because he said, I thought you were coming out of the seat after.
That's funny.
Oh my gosh. So that was a training.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not really like that,
yeah.
right? And I said, yes. He said, I'm just trying to show you that culturally, there are some people that are going to treat you differently.
Sure.
So he said, now if you had been a woman, I would have used a tactic like that. So then the other time, which we've talked about, we had to do what's called a bump. You had to find a reason, just like, you see in the movies, to get in front of a person so they allow you to sit down and talk to them so you can start a relationship.
Right. So you've identified your spy, the asset,
yes,
who has access to whatever it is you want.
Yep. And so in this case, it was early on, so they had identified, our instructor had identified it for it. Here's a picture of them, blah, 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 their background, all that stuff. So I knew they were going to be at this bar. So I go to this bar, and I walk in, and it's like 1 in the afternoon or so. I walk in, and there's like maybe 6 people in the bar. I see the guy sitting there, and I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? So I notice he has a newspaper. So I go past him, use the restroom, come back out, and I stop, and I'm like, oh. I was like, I didn't get a chance to read the newspaper today. I'm trying to find this article about such and such. Do you mind if I take a quick look? And he just gave this little smirk, like, yeah you slick mother. So he was like, sure. So I sit down, and we're talking, and he had a beer, so he finished. I said,
he's a role player.
He's a role player as well. Yeah, as well. Okay. Well, I'm going to say all of them, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to say most, if not all of them, are former intelligence officers, case officers, whatever they are.
Right.
And so they're seasoned, so they know they know how to play this.
Right.
So, and most of them fly in from other parts of the country. So, so I would ask if you want another beer, which you're supposed to do. You're supposed to ingratiate yourself. So, I go up to the bar to get a beer. Now again, there's 6 people in this bar. Nobody's sitting near me, and I'm like, the bartender's right there. I'm like, hey, excuse me. And he just looks at me and just goes back to what he's doing. Doesn't walk away, doesn't pretend he doesn't hear me, just completely ignores me. I'm like, excuse me, like twice. Ignore me. Well, now the role player gets up, walks over, and he's like, excuse me, do you not see this man standing here? The guy pulls back his sleeve, and there's a freaking swastika on his wrist. The instructor looks at me, or the role player, and goes like this, meaning we are not rolling right now. And he was like, I don't give a shit what you have on your arm. If he asks for a beer, you're going to give it to him. The guy's like, I don't serve his kind here. You would have thought we were in the movie The Heat of the Night. It was like, what? And that guy was like, you're going to go back to your classroom. He's like, this is over. You're going to go back to your classroom, and you're going to tell the instructors what happened. I will follow it up with a phone call. And I was like, you sure? And he was like, yep, go. And by the time I got back, they had already known what was happening. That bar was declared off limits, and I don't know what happened after.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't pick bars called the Eagle's Nest.
Yeah. The Reichstag
Yeah,
Inn.
the Reichstag Inn. Exactly.
Yeah. And apparently that bar had been used before, no problems. I don't know who else went in there, Black, White, or whatever.
Right.
But or if he was a new one. But wow, I was like, wow, is this part of the extra? But when he went like that, I knew that wasn't a part of it. So yeah. So those instances, really, that was it.
Yeah.
Did you ever have, like, working operationally, handling assets, like, any interesting experiences? Do they approach? Because I've asked this to many different people, both military and intelligence community people who are African American, and they always have, like, a very interesting answer when I ask them this question.
No, I did have one Somali guy that I was working with who flat out, and I've heard this before, told me that I don't see you as black. You know, Africans don't see African Americans as Africans.
You don't look at any Somalian.
So, I mean, there's that. And then once when I was going through an airport, I was escorted in the secondary, and the guy basically was like, you know, are you here to sell drugs? And so, what? No. You know, then he asked me, he was weird, he was all over the place, asked me if I like little boys or something like that. And I was
This was in an American airport?
No. This is a foreign airport.
Okay.
No. And I was like, what? No. I was like, no. And he was just trying to trip me up.
Well, either that or he was trying to either buy drugs or sell you a boy. Who knows?
So, I mean, but no, other than that, no. I mean, everybody else that I worked with, you know, whether it was liaison or otherwise, everybody was pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, if I had a problem with anybody, most of the time, it was somebody at headquarters. That's what it was.
Is the bureaucracy?
That's usually what it was. And we talked about like the ones who everybody was clamoring to get over to the GWAT, you know. So you could always tell the ones who had just come back because their hair was a little longer. They had a beard if it was a guy, big watch, and they would just walk with their nose in the air, and it was like, oh.
Yeah.
Come here, you can still get punched in the face.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And then they're going on to their next, because they just had a hardship tour.
Yeah, so now they're going to
Paris. Now they're on their way to Paris.
I'm debating whether I should cut this off before I go to Beijing.
Smelling of gun oil and blood.
Yeah. So, I mean, other than that, you know, some people had to be taken down a peg because it's funny, there's tribes and tribes and tribes. So it's like, you have them coming in, oh, I was elite, I was, you know, either special operations or I was Ivy League school. Then when they get to the agency, it's, oh my God, now I'm agency, you're FBI or State Department. And then within that, it's, I'm director of operations and your support or whatever. And then within that, it's, you know, I'm in NR or I'm in, at the time it was either any Near East Division or, you know, SAD or something like that. And so there's all these tribes and tribes, and
so it really is like high school, like
it really is.
People never grow up.
Yeah, people don't grow up. They don't change. So
hey, Alex, thank you very much. And he wants to know, Jack, can you go over your A10 Top Gun pitch?
Yeah. So we're getting off topic
too.
So you guys see the new trailer for the Top Gun movie?
No, sure did.
And it actually looks like it's going to be fucking cool.
I want to know where Sundowner is.
Is Tom Cruise?
Where's the black pilot?
Fuck, I don't know, man.
Exactly. We could have had him, man. Remember that dude?
What about? I think I heard somewhere Val Kilmer is going to have a cameo.
I heard. Yeah, I heard that too.
Is Tom Cruise in it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I was actually watching a thing today about how they actually put Tom Cruise up in, like, I guess an F-16, and they were filming him like, actually not just him, all the other actors, the younger actors also. So they're like pulling G's and stuff, and barrel turns.
That'd be fun.
And actually, I mean, I was never a big Top Gun fan, but like the movie actually looks pretty cool, so I'll check it out. But anyways, so my point was about this. I was like, when do we get a Top Gun film about an A-10 pilot? In the movie, the A-10 pilot, it should be a girl that's like 5'3" from like Alabama or Missouri and like dips Copenhagen snuff. It should be like that kind of, because like the public has this idea, this vision of like when they're going to get a female Navy SEAL, it's going to look like Demi Moore.
Yeah.
When we get a female Ranger, she's going to look like Mia Jovovich or Gal Gadot, like these beautiful women, these beautiful like femme fatales. And it's like, no, the reality of it is when those women do come around, when we do have female Rangers and SEALs, they're going to be like these kind of like stocky girls, like they're going to be butch, they're going to be able to deadlift some weight, and they're going to talk like fucking soldiers.
Yeah, because
and they're going to be just as bad as the guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, we're dicks.
Yep.
And they're going to be fucking assholes too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that's just the kind of personality and the type of person you're going to get into those jobs. They're not going to be the super feminine woman.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see them do a Top Gun film about this female A-10 pilot who just like, you know, start like yelling at guys like, get your fucking cock handles off my fucking airplane, you know, like pushing the guy into the lockers and shit. Like, what are you looking at, breeder? Get the fuck out of here.
Exactly.
You know, like I said, like, you know, you have a scene where like she's taking guys home from the bar and then like afterwards like throws them a box of Kleenexes, is like, wipe yourself off, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
You know,
I gotta get up early.
on one hand, it like gives the woke girl power movement exactly what they want, but not quite in the way they want it.
Right.
Reality of it.
So it draws a little bit of that in, but it also draws in the God-fearing American that loves war movies, and you know, definitely scenes of her doing gun runs, strafing runs.
I'll tell you what, I'd watch a movie of nothing but A-10 runs.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Just like,
Absolutely.
and like there's, I don't know if either of you guys ever experienced this, but it would be a great scene in a movie to play out. Like if you open up the film and it's a bunch of like Rangers on the ground. And this actually happened to me in Afghanistan, or the platoon I was with in Charlie Company. We kept hearing this girl's voice over the net. And, you know, a bunch of Rangers been overseas for a while.
It's like Squirrel.
Yeah,
Squirrel.
we haven't even seen a woman in
Yeah.
I don't know how long. And you're hearing this girl, and she sounds hot. Like, I don't know how to describe that to people, but this girl sounds hot. And she's over the net, and you hear her voice every so often, and everyone on target is looking around like, where is she?
God?
Where the fuck is it? Like, you keep hearing her, but where the fuck is she? And finally someone put two and two together. You know, like whoever that is, they're in the air. And so now there's like, what base is she on? Is she with us? Is she over in Kandahar? Where is it? And I heard through the grapevine that she was a AC-130 pilot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'll tell you what, one of the most, it's funny because, you know, people talk about war movies, and I don't watch a lot of like modern war, like I like old war movies, but I don't like a lot of the new ones that are about Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's not because like they're traumatic, it's not, I'm not into
stupid.
It's like I've been there, I don't, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be like what, I imagine it'd be like an accountant watching a movie about accounting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's not the accountant with Ben Affleck. But anyway, but one of the most powerful scenes in a movie, like a moment that literally made me stand up and cheer, was in, I think it was the first Transformers, when they were out in the desert. And did you guys see that? The first Transformers, they're out in the desert, and like the Decepticons are coming in, and then the AC-130, the Spectre starts to light up, and I was like, yeah, because I mean, anybody who has kind of had their ass pulled out of the fire by Spectre, like that thing, like it's like when it's a really really cold day, or like you've been in a patrol base all night long and you're freezing, and all of a sudden the sun comes up and just feeling it, you know, you're like, that's Spectre. Spectre is the sunshine coming out on a gloom-filled, coldy day. That's like, oh, thank God.
That's the aircraft that the Taliban are like really afraid
of. Oh yeah, because it flies so low that they can hear it.
Yeah.
And man, when they can hear that, it's like you don't have a lot to worry about, because they know that they can.
I was in Afghanistan in 2004, so like things were relatively tame. But we had AC-130 reducing targets in Iraq after we pull off of objectives.
Reducing targets, I love that.
As we're pulling off, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom.
Now, did they fly during the day?
This was at night.
It was
I know they wouldn't fly during the day.
When I came back to that same city in 2009 when I was with SF, I got to see their handiwork. Those buildings were still there.
It's they wouldn't fly during the day because they fly so low, and you can see them naked eye.
But don't tell me that movie wouldn't fucking sell. I was saying on Twitter, I was like, man, that's like permission to make your own printing press and just run off sheets of $100 bills.
Would you do a cameo?
Me personally,
like the grizzled.
I could be like one of the like ranger, like I'm old enough. I could be like the platoon sergeant.
Yeah,
in that scene.
yeah.
Like who's the girl on the radio? I could be that guy.
Who's a split?
All right, sweet cheeks.
all right, ladies. Yeah, it's time for you to soldier up. Yeah, I could do that. I'd be a shoo-in for that role.
Yeah, I'd be the dude like refueling it. Filling her up.
Good luck.
Yeah, unleaded.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be a fucking baller-ass movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
let's see what kind of questions we have back in the comments.
Yeah, sure.
If you guys really, really, really want us to nail your question and to get it out there, throw us 99 cents and we'll get on it.
he's lowered it by a penny.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So while Dave looks in there, I mean, without going into, I know you probably can't go into any specific information, but I mean, what's it like actually handling an agency asset and going in there and meeting with one of these people and, whatever it is you have to do at the time?
So I didn't have any long-term ones, but the ones that I did have were turnovers, so they were pretty easy. I didn't have to go through the full cycle of recruiting and all that other stuff. Which, if I had stayed, would have been a detriment to my career because they want you to have full cycle recruitments under your belt.
Right.
But the ones that I did were pretty well seasoned. So they were like one guy. The very first one was a guy who worked in the exciting world of minerals. But within that, some of the components of these minerals were able to be used in the manufacturing of missile components, things like that.
Interesting.
When I got this guy's file, literally it was like a movie. They bought it up. Like first it was like a stack. Boom, here you go. And then it was like carts. He had been an asset since like 1979.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, oh. So I had to read all this stuff. It was insane. And eventually my boss came out and was like, listen, don't worry about this part. Just read this. And the guy, it was almost like he knew how to handle me in the sense like I've done this before. Right. I know, of course, you don't want to ever let an asset run the meetings or the relationship, but
he knew the deal.
He knew the deal. The one thing he was really good at was realizing that I wasn't the previous officer. So while most things would stay the same, there were certain things that because of my personality messing with his, we had to change up. But overall, it was a lot of fun because I loved learning about these people. And another thing that NR does is community outreach, meaning we will go to, in partnership with the FBI, go to U.S. businesses in the United States that work overseas, do shipping, whatever it is, and say, hey, this is who we are, because we have to tell them that we are agency. We don't give them a real name, but we say this is who we are, and we know that we've noticed through our research that you do great work with blah blah blah, whatever it is. Some of your work's in China or whatever it is. Would you be interested in helping us? And in my experience, in the time that I did it, 99% of them said yes. Either they were like, absolutely, hell yes, or if you hadn't come to me, I was going to come to you. That sort of thing. So if they said yes, we would brief them on, don't do any stupid spy shit like steal a manual, which actually happened, not to me, but to a deputy chief of mine. He went to a meeting, an asset meeting, and the guy's like, hey, I got something for you. And it was like, boom! And it was I want to say it was SU-35 or some from a foreign country. He had gone to a trade show and stolen a manual and bought it back. And he's like, oh, what am I supposed to do? So he's like, you can't do that. The guy's like, well, I can't take it back now. So
I found it.
Yeah, so it actually ended up going to headquarters and they did whatever they did with it. But we have to tell them, do not do that. Don't do anything out of the ordinary that you wouldn't normally do. Just come back.
Because they're supposed to be, if anything, a support agent, not an action agent, right? So
yes.
They're not supposed to be breaking into safes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll just, just tell us the things that you think would be of interest, or we'll say to you, if you hear about this, just let us know. We won't task them. We don't task them with anything. Because again, they're not an action agent, they're just support. There have been some that have said no. I went to one where the guy said he did some work with another country and said, not only is it no, but I'm going to tell my customers that you approach me. At that point, the me part of me wanted to punch in his face.
Right.
Said, well, now you can tell them that. But okay, no problem. Sorry, to disturb you. We move on. People have asked me, I've told that story to someone else, and they asked me, because you're with FBI, they're like, well, can you just arrest them? No, they didn't do anything illegal.
Right.
They were asked a legitimate legal question, and they said no, legitimately, and we just let it go. Now, so the way it works is, if we want to go after a company, or approach a company, I shouldn't say go after, we will tell our FBI partners, this is what we want to do, this is what we're proposing. They will check their holdings, and if there's no legal action pending against them or an investigation, okay. If there is, 9 times out of 10 they'll say no or hold off. Sometimes they'll say, okay, we're going to go with you and we're going to see what we can find out while you're there.
Right.
So
right.
it just, it just depends.
Any interesting questions?
I haven't made it through all of them. Nuclear security, do you know anything about this? The nuclear security at the Amarillo Panax plant go on strike in 2007?
I wasn't there,
Yeah.
so I don't know anything about it.
Let's see here. What specific career opportunities are directed at someone in the CIA if they have an interest in geopolitics and global affairs? Example, the doings of China, Russia, Iran, etc.
Anything. Literally.
Yeah.
So there are certain things, while you don't have to be like super nerd or whatever it is to get in. Before you get there, you will have a conversation with your recruiter about what you want to do and what's best for the agency. So based on your skill set, especially something like that, you'll probably end up being an operations officer.
Yeah.
They're not going to force you to do it, but they're going to strongly suggest you do it. But you could also be an analyst.
An analyst, yeah.
So it just depends. Like me, people always ask, what do I have to or need to have to go? And I said, there's a difference between have to and need to, in the sense that you have to have a college degree to be operations, to go into clandestine service.
Right.
But you should have or need to have, it would be great to have, I should say, a language, some sort of world affairs background would work best. I shouldn't say work best, but would help you. But you don't have to have those things. I didn't have a language. I still don't have a language. I gained some things while I was there, but I don't. You were DLI, so you went to DLI, so you were formally trained. I wasn't. What the agency will do is they'll strongly encourage you to get a language, and they will pay for you to get a language. And there's signing bonuses and all that other stuff.
Did the CIA sell cocaine in South Los Angeles?
Not to me, they didn't. But they bought crack in. No, I'm just playing. No, I don't know.
So AW says, you're the coolest guest we've had so far.
Well, thank you.
Let's see here, common sense. They want to know what your shirt says.
Oh, stop. Wait, which camera? That one?
Yeah.
It says Black Panther on it. I think. Although, this could be one of those tattoo things. That says, eat nuts or something.
These balls.
Yeah, I don't know.
These nuts.
I like to collect T-shirts that are not mainstream.
Yeah,
that's my thing.
Sahara says, what's the overall vibe regarding CIA operations in Russia and vice versa? Obviously, we can't go into details, but would it be feasible for a Kremlin asset to be in a tier 1 soft unit and vice versa? I mean, I guess he's saying could Russia infiltrate somebody into a tier 1 special operations unit? I guess they could.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. If you watch that show, The Americans, that's based loosely on actual, not events, but an actual couple. I don't know all the details, but anything's possible. The whole goal of sleepers is to, from birth, be raised towards that
ideology.
And Russia can do that. We can't
do that. But they are they were very good at it. When I mean, if you look at those 10 who got rolled a couple of years ago, maybe they're losing their touch a little bit, but overall they're good at that.
Well, and the other thing is like when you're identifying one of the biggest things about Tier 1 units is while the people are active in it is the anonymity. And one of the reasons for that anonymity isn't just to protect them against hostile threats, whether, ISIS is going to come over and look for them and try to kill them in their homes. But it's also, people have vulnerabilities. And, as an ops officer or as, other ops officers in other countries, you're looking for something that you can exploit. What is exploitable in this person? Do they want money? Do they have a gambling problem? Is their child sick and we can get them medical care in the United States or whatever else? So in the same way, if foreign services were looking at Tier 1 operators or anybody for that matter, they're looking for the same type of stuff. They're looking for what is it about this person that we can exploit? Yeah. Because obviously, if somebody's in a Tier 1 unit, then they probably have a sense of patriotism, right? I mean, a lot of people the reason people get into special ops or do this or do that is because they're hardcore patriots. And I would say that, everybody's probably a patriot, but there's also a selfish aspect to it, where everybody does it because they want to.
Yeah.
They love doing that, But that doesn't mean that for all of them that $500,000 couldn't overcome their patriotism to a certain extent, because there's also it's also like when you're approaching somebody, you're not telling them necessarily to sell you the whole farm for. You're like, look, I know that you have friends there. I know that. And they may not even know it's Russia approaching them. Yeah. It could be a false flag, right? It could be, exactly. A person can pose as a journalist and say, "Hey, I just want to know some details of this story. I don't want to know your friends. And then bit by bit, they open it up more and more.
I mean, you could even. If I were a Russian and I were going about that, I'd just hit them up and be like, "Oh, hey, we're in this office at JSOC, and we just need to improve communications between our fellow offices." And can you just slide us some info on the DL so that we can deconflict battle space?
Yeah, a lot of human engineering.
Yeah, just tease it right out of them.
Yeah,
I don't think it would even be hard.
Well, and the other thing that other countries will do that the United States generally won't. I think that the United States is pretty reluctant to do it. I don't even know if they do, but are honeypots. Mm-hmm. So you throw a hot agent, a hot chick, in a bar where that operators go to, she's going to get some secrets over time.
Even throwing a male, a guy, either another male, or B, a female, because a good, and to qualify what you said, the U.S., as far as I know, does not.
See, that's what I believe that too. I don't think they do.
I don't think we do that. But before, unlike in the movies, and because of expediency of time and all that, that would be something that would be worked over a long period. Because you can't just throw it at anyone. It has to be, there's certain criteria. Is that person lonely?
Right.
Is that person have other issues going on around them that will fog their senses enough that when I throw this person at them, they're going to be...
and when I say... and they're not... that person would not be trying to get all the secrets in one night. Not. It's a process.
And it may not be any secrets at all. It could be they're looking to put that person in a compromising position so that the real intelligence officers can come in and say, now we have video. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So... It's a long.
You'd be like, I don't know, throw it on YouPorn.
Exactly. Exactly. I know I think my wife's listening, so I'm just gonna say now, if they ever did that to me and said we're gonna tell, I'd be like, here's the phone number.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I would rather it's like a lie. I'd rather you get it now.
You told me that story one time about the case officer who had somebody slide pictures across the table to him.
Yes, and he freaking was like, oh well. Yeah, they don't care. They especially the old school ones.
Yeah.
Because this was an old school case officer. Someone approached him and said, we have this envelope, we think you need to see it, open it up. It's him doing his thing. Oh well, they don't.
Yeah.
That's some gangster ass shit.
That's gangster, yeah.
Just
you know,
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. Hey,
it is what it is.
Send me a copy.
Yeah. You have that on video.
Yeah.
Well, we got to wrap it up here, and I wanted to do, if you thought of anything, do some a video for our subscribers, the actual supporters of the stream, like just like an anecdote or something. I don't know. We'll talk about it after we finish here.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to record that for like 10 minutes, so like maybe we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll get going on the stream.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll have to have
Well,
James
100%.
back on again
absolutely.
because there's a lot more stories and interesting.
Should we
ins
talk
and
at all
outs.
about our project? Is that something?
Not yet because we don't have anything to deliver quite yet.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that.
So
later.
James, Jim says, I met a guy on a SEPTA train in Philly who said he was in the CIA and was one of the first to land in Afghanistan, but he seemed off to me. I didn't know how to vet him properly. Is there anything I could ask properly, respectfully to vet him?
There's not really anything that you can ask them. What you could do is, and we were told this operationally, is if you approach, like, say, a U.S. company, which is one of my duties, and they say, well, how do I know that you're with the CIA? You can direct that person to the CIA's website, and on there, I don't know exactly where it was, I think it was in like on the left corner or something like that. There's something it was called the Threat Management Unit. You can call that number and you can say, does such and such work for you? And they'll just tell you yes or no. So I would ask that person their name. And the reason why I say you go to the website is, if you say to them, give me a number to call your boss, they can give you any number.
Now, this might be more of a casual. I don't know if this was just like a sort of a casual, like sort of like in you know, you might ask a guy like what Ranger School class he went to, or like what are some what are some insider things that
only in a true you could ask them their class number.
Yeah.
You could, but then you'd have to have a way to.
You'd have a way of knowing that.
Or you have to, or ask their pseudo,
you could ask their pseudo, and if they don't know what a pseudo is, that's.
Whereas the problem I've had as a journalist, like when I talk to former agency people, and I'm trying to, I have to do my diligence and verify that they are who they say they are, and that they were basically where they said they were. So then I, take the name to other people I know who are in the agency, and do you know such and such? And like, I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, because we only know each other by pseudos.
So I have to get the picture, and you remember, I can say since he's public, Tom King, the comic book artist, and he was one of those guys who, like, we know some people in common.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, the comic book writer, not artist, but he was a former agency dude. And so, like, I have to, like, resort to pictures and, like, get a picture of Tom King off of, like, a website.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you know this man? And I'm like, oh yeah, I went to the forum with him. He was a funny guy. He was great.
He's one
And
of
then
my
all of a
favorite
sudden,
comic book writers. Love him. But yeah, I mean, you could also ask them, things like, when were you said you were one of the first ones in, who else was on your team? They're smart, they're going to say, I can't tell you that, but it's a little harder than with somebody, the stolen valor of the military, because there's not a Don Shipley that you can go to and say.
There's no Don Shipley anymore because he got kicked off YouTube.
no, he's back.
Oh,
is he? Okay, but there's not somebody like that.
It's even worse than that, in the sense that, like, you can, even if the dude was like a JSOC guy, you can get like a one-page service record from the Pentagon after they're out. Again, as a journalist, this is things I've had to do in the past, right? Is either FOIA information, or you don't even have to FOIA it to get that one page. It says, Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, served in wherever, basic shit.
Yeah.
They'll give you that. Like, you go to the CIA and say, did Wayne Simmons serve in the CIA? It's just crickets. They're not going to confirm or deny. Did Amaryllis Fox, was she really a knock?
Yeah.
They're not going to confirm or deny.
Right. Even in my job now, recruiting for Naval Intel, we have people that apply that were CIA. And so there's a thing called an SF-50, which is your basic hey, this guy worked here. This is how much he was paid. Blah blah blah. The last one before you left, and you get one when you come in, and then you'll get them periodically for different things, awards, whatever. You'll get a resignation one as well. So we asked them for their last one, and they're like, how? I can't give it to you. I was lucky that I had one.
Right.
I asked for one and got one before I left, because trying to get one for somebody who doesn't have one already, it's close to impossible.
Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess one thing you could do, especially if he told you that he was the first one in Afghanistan, is you could ask him what division or branch he was in when that happened, because there were very limited numbers of.
You say that shit to me, I'll find out in 15 minutes whether or not it's for real.
And also ask them their job, I suppose, because like I think a lot of people who say like I was CIA or whatever, they don't know anything. They don't know enough about the agency to even put on a good show.
Bro, there was only like 2-3 teams infilled initially.
And ask them if they were on that first team. What's the book? What's the name of the book that was written in that specific instance? Because Gary Sharon wrote a book, and Gary Barron.
Yeah, it's like the guy who told me he was, and this guy actually was a legitimate Special Forces NCO, but he couldn't help himself. Had to tell me he was an A squadron.
Had to kick it up.
Had to tell me
had to turn it up a notch.
Had to tell me he was an operator. So I started asking around. I'm like, okay, so who do you know in the unit? The only people he could name were KIAs.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm like, huh.
Some people make a living out of doing that.
I know. I know. I was in Megaforce. That's an old
Rockets
movie.
that
Yeah, exactly. It's like, nobody knows that. Yeah.
So all the guys you knew in this unit were either killed in Somalia or died in training accidents.
And you lived.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Just jumping in, not sure if this has been asked. What's the best path to get into the DO, the Director of Operations? Military first, graduate degree in regional studies, international relations.
They're asking if those things are good to have, or they have those things.
Best path to get into the DO.
Just have honestly a college degree.
Yeah.
If you have a language and all those things, great, but a desire to work in the DO, but you have to know what it is you're getting into.
Yeah, and the military is not a requirement
It's
for
not
anything other than paramilitary stuff.
Yeah, and the reason for that is, and people have asked me that. I've spoken at classrooms and stuff, and they ask me why wouldn't you want somebody to have military background, blah blah blah. And I said, think about what it is that you're doing. Your end goal is you're trying to get someone to spy for you, or you're trying to run covert action. If everybody has a high and tight haircut, or is jacked, or is this and that, everybody's going to stick out. You're going to stick out. The way I tell them is, think of a what's it called? Pass a visa line, or you're coming back into an airport from you're flying overseas, and you have all these different lines. And would you be able to pick out the CIA officer? You shouldn't be able to.
Right.
The average Ranger is not cut out for that kind of work.
Yeah.
Some are.
Yeah.
But the average one, no.
Absolutely. Because it's like, and and actually along those lines, I asked a question when I first got there early. We had an assembly of the new officers, the new class, and Zayman, you know who Greg Vogel is, right?
I know of him.
He was the chief SAD. Love him. Just amazing guy. He was in charge of this, so he actually administered the oath to us, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And so he's like, does anybody have any questions? So I thought about it, and I'm like, I just want to know, what is the thinking behind sending someone that looks like me to Sweden to run operations, and then sending a pale guy to Africa to run operations? And he sat there, and he was like, as long as I've been here, I don't know. He was like, he said, his answer basically was, that's always the way it's been done, so that's the way it's done.
I don't think that the government has ever, whether it's in the military, in the agencies or anything like that, the government has never been focused on the right person for the right job. It's just it is just the numbers. It's just like, I've got a stack of papers and I'm going to put people here.
Special Forces will generally do it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Asian guys that get sent to first group.
Yeah.
A lot of the Puerto Ricans and Mexicans,
and
Latinos get sent to seventh group.
And that's
And that's why we don't have many Arabs, many Muslims,
Yeah.
many Arabic speakers in the military. So fifth group ends up being guys that look like me.
Drew Dwyer, was it a heart attack? Yeah, it was. I thought it was a heart attack.
I mean, I'm not going to get into it. If his family wanted to make a statement about it, they would have.
Yeah.
You know.
How come nobody ever talks about optics used in surveillance, zoom cameras, binos, monos, telescopes?
Because that's a whole different office that does that stuff.
Yeah, that's technical surveillance.
Yeah,
like if you are doing surveillance on the street, you're gonna everybody around you is gonna see you pull out a telephoto lens and stuff like that.
And now we're taught basically in the beginning how to not that kind of stuff, but like how to, when you check into a hotel, look around basically, for signs of surveillance.
Right.
You're not going to really see pinholes and stuff, but there's an actual, at the farm, they have a house or a couple of houses that are built like that. Like you're supposed to go in and you're supposed to have like a little meeting, a little thing or whatever, and inside that house is like pinhole cameras and stuff like that, and then they come screaming up, so you're taught basically to look for that stuff, but if that's what you're specializing in, you'll learn.
Yeah,
all of it.
That's a whole separate,
Yeah.
and understand that surveillance is a very different skill set than surveillance detection.
Absolutely.
They're two completely different, because you guys don't even do surveillance.
We don't do surveillance. No,
yeah.
we have.
It's a completely different skill set.
Right.
I mean, you have to understand the fundamentals of surveillance in order to do surveillance detection, to defeat it. But it's very different.
All right, guys. We need to get going because we got to do an exclusive segment also for the supporters of the stream. But thanks everyone for coming by, and thank you for coming out and making the trek out here. I want to do it again the next time you're in the city.
Absolutely.
Let us know. There's lots more to talk about.
Yes.
Lots more. I mean, this could go on for another like 2.5 hours.
How long have we been gone?
Like 2.5 hours.
Oh my God! I'm so sorry.
No.
So sorry.
No, it's all right. It's fun. I would keep going, except we have a meeting after this.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for coming by. We'll do this again with our guest. Please subscribe to the stream if you haven't. Please remember to hit that bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. And if you look down in the description, you can find the link for the podcast if that's what you're interested in instead of watching the video. You can also find the Patreon link if you want to support the stream financially. We really appreciate that. And
thanks to all our donors today. We really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any parting words?
No, I mean, like that little old lady said to me, if you're in the room, you belong in the room. So if you guys want to be a spy,
get in the room.
Get in the room. Get yourself in the room. Do whatever you need to do to get in that room legally, of course. And just, know that you belong there. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks, brother.